Chapter 678. Shi Mengwan's body was pressed against the door. Wan Xianying was outside, and Zhang Haoze was inside. She was a little confused. Her only thought was that she couldn't let the two of them meet. Turning around, she suddenly faced Zhang Haoze's approaching body. It was rare for her to feel a little nervous. What do you want? After asking this question, Shi Mengwan realized how stupid her question was. She almost bit her tongue off. Zhang Haoze, go to the bathroom and hide for a while. Zhang Haoze narrowed his eyes and looked at her without moving at all. Zhang Haoze. There was another knock on the door. Shi Mengwan's eyes were a little anxious. She started to reach out to push him. However, considering that he was injured, she didn't use too much strength. Zhang Haoze suddenly grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her heavily on the lips. Shi Mengwan sucked in a breath of cold air, but he took advantage of this moment to barge in. He forcefully plundered her. It seemed like it had been a long time since he kissed her like this. Zhang Haoze's heart was moved and he couldn't control himself. His kiss had always been irresistible to her. Before long, she was completely immersed in his kiss. She wrapped her hands around the back of his waist and slowly moved up. There were a few more knocks on the door, and Shi Mengwan came back to her senses from Zhang Haoze's kiss. She pushed hard and Zhang Haoze took 2 steps back. Shi Mengwan stood there and kept adjusting her breathing. Zhang Haoze, if you plan to let others know that you're with me now, you can continue. Zhang Haoze didn't continue. He looked deeply at Shi Mengwan, then nodded and turned to enter the bathroom. Shi Mengwan heaved a sigh of relief. She was really afraid that Zhang Haoze would continue regardless. After all, not many people knew them in this foreign country. Taking a deep breath, she turned to open the door. Wan Xianying, who was outside the door, smiled when he saw her. He handed a bouquet of flowers to her with a faint smile on his face. Congratulations. Shi Mengwan looked at the bouquet of flowers and wasn't in a hurry to take it. Wan Xianying took a step forward and gestured for her to accept the flowers. Why? You passed the semi-finals and entered the finals. Isn't it worth being happy about? Thank you. Shi Mengwan took the flowers. Wan Xianying looked at her face and his gaze fell on her body. Her clothes were a little messy, but he couldn't tell if he didn't look closely. His gaze shifted upwards and landed on the other party's lips. Wan Xianying narrowed his eyes slightly. It was only for a moment before he quickly put on a smile. What? Aren't you going to invite me in? This was not convenient at all. Shi Mengwan looked at the bouquet of flowers in her hand, but she couldn't refuse. Please come in. You don't have to be so polite. Wan Xianying entered the door and quickly scanned the room. He didn't see anyone. Finally, he glanced in the direction of the bathroom and sat down on the sofa in the room. That's right, you've passed the semi-finals. Next should be the finals, right? I heard that you guys are going to complete your work in isolation. You even know this? Shi Mengwan was indeed a little surprised. I have a friend in the committee. So, one more question. Wan Xianying looked at her with a cautious expression. You won't be angry, right? I won't. This competition was no secret. In order to ensure fairness, the officials had already announced the process. Are you guys going in the afternoon? Why don't I send you there? There's no need. Shi Mengwan refused without thinking. I brought my assistant over. She has arranged a car. We'll go together when the time comes. All right then. Wan Xianying looked at her. How many days are you going? I'll pick you guys up and celebrate for you. Is that okay? We still don't know how the results are. It's too early to celebrate. In such a competition with so many experts, Shi Mengwan didn't dare to think that she could get into the top 3. She was already very happy to be able to enter the semi-finals. I have confidence in you. You'll definitely get a very good ranking. Wan Xianying was much more confident in her. Maybe you can even get first place. Don't joke around. Shi Mengwan looked at the list of people who came to participate this time, especially those who made it into the top 10. She even paid attention today. Masters wouldn't come to such a competition, but there were many newcomers with good results. She was just a small studio. It was already her luck to be able to make it into the top 10. Don't think that way. In my heart, you're number one. Wan Xianying's words were equivalent to saying sweet nothings. Shi Mengwan didn't reply. Do you have anything else? Are you asking me to leave? No, I still have to pack my things. Xiao Ji and the others will come to find me later. Then you're still chasing me away. Wan Xianying, alright, I'll leave, okay? Wan Xianying stood up as he spoke. When he passed by Shi Mengwan, he stopped. If you need to pack your things, I won't disturb you anymore. However, I still hope that I can celebrate with you if I have the chance. Thank you. Wan Xianying continued to walk out. When he passed by the bathroom door, he glanced there seemingly unintentionally. Shi Mengwan's heart instantly skipped a beat. She took a few steps and opened the door first. Wan Xianying had already walked to the door. When he saw her actions, he smiled helplessly. You really can't wait to chase me away. I'm really hurt when you're like this. Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment, but Wan Xianying moved his body forward a little. In order to calm my hurt heart, why don't you give me a comforting kiss? Shi Mengwan was shocked by his actions, but Wan Xianying suddenly smiled. Alright, I won't tease you anymore. Come on. Compete well. I wish you a good ranking. Okay. Thank you. Shi Mengwan's expression wasn't as casual as before. Even though Wan Xianying had expressed his intention to leave, her eyes were still a little guarded. That look made Wan Xianying sigh in his heart. Sister-in-law's best friend was really not easy to get close to. However, when he stepped out of the room, he unintentionally glanced in the direction of the bathroom again. Why did he feel that the door seemed to have moved just now? However, before he could see clearly, Shi Mengwan had already quickly closed the door. After Wan Xianying left, Shi Mengwan heaved a sigh of relief. However, just as she turned around, she saw Zhang Haoze coming out of the bathroom. With a cold face, he stood there expressionlessly and looked at her. Under his gaze, Shi Mengwan actually felt a sense of guilt. But it was only for a moment, and she quickly ignored it. Based on what? He could be engaged to another woman and be affectionate with her. She only had a suitor, and yet she felt guilty. She walked past Zhang Haoze and planned to continue packing her luggage, but her arm was grabbed by Zhang Haoze. Her body was turned around by him, and then she was pressed against the wall behind her. Zhang Haoze, she cried out. Zhang Haoze didn't give her a chance to speak again. He lowered his head to kiss her. It was a fierce and rough kiss. Shi Mengwan's lips were in pain from being crushed by him. She pushed him, but he didn't move at all. In a hurry, she placed her hand on his abdomen and wanted to attack his wound. But when she really touched that area, she put her hand down again. This pause undoubtedly gave Zhang Haoze another chance. He easily lifted her body and put her in a position where he was. Once again, he sealed her lips and nibbled on those two soft lips. Shi Mengwan was in pain and bit him instead. She used even more strength than Zhang Haoze. She bit down just like that, and she bit him so hard that his lips were bitten open just like that. The two of them tasted blood at the same time. The scene in front of them was so similar. Shi Mengwan thought of the last time she went on a blind date with Xiao Qi, and Zhang Haoze was also like this. She felt hatred in her heart and pushed him hard without caring about anything else. Zhang Haoze's abdomen was pushed by her. He snorted in pain and took a step back. Shi Mengwan used this opportunity to retreat from his arms and stand on the other side. Her chest was heaving violently, and her lips were still stained with blood. Her hair was a little messy, and the front of her clothes was mostly crooked. She looked like she was in a sorry state, but there was also a kind of beauty in her. Zhang Haoze narrowed his eyes and subconsciously took a step forward. Shi Mengwan took a step back. She looked at the person in front of her with a burning gaze. Zhang Haoze, you can't be like this every time. Her heart was beating a little fast. She bit her lip, and the expression on her face was a little reproachful and bitter at the same time. I'm your girlfriend, right? If not, what right do you have to treat me like this? If you're your girlfriend, what right do you have to treat me like this? She closed her eyes and forced herself not to admit defeat in front of Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze, can you respect me? Or is it that in your heart, I'm just that kind of casual woman that you can do whatever you want? Zhang Haoze was a little stunned by her righteous words, but Shi Mengwan didn't want to care about him anymore. Zhang Haoze, I'm going to the venue prepared by the organizing committee this afternoon for the competition. I won't be here for the next few days. Help yourself. She turned around to pack her luggage and stopped after taking 2 steps. Zhang Haoze, I don't think you like me that much, right? It's just a possessive desire. If it's not me, it can be other women. To you, there's no difference. To him, she was just an embellishment in his life. But to her, he was everything. Not treating her feelings seriously meant that she was at a disadvantage in this relationship. Her silhouette looked lonely from behind, which was rare for her to be like that. No matter when, she always gave people the feeling that she was optimistic and cheerful. Zhang Haoze stared at her back. Finally, when her hand touched the suitcase, he went forward and pulled her back into his arms. I didn't. Zhang Haoze looked at her and instinctively wanted to explain. In his heart, he had never seen her as a casual woman. Nothing? I'm not, Zhang Haoze said again. This time, he sounded even more serious than before. Shi Mengwan looked at him and inexplicably understood what he meant. He said that he wasn't being possessive. Are you trying to say that you like me? Shi Mengwan looked at him and returned to yesterday's question. Then do you think of me as your girlfriend? Zhang Haoze looked at her face and nodded gently. His expression was extremely serious. Shi Mengwan looked at him. Then, after we go back, can you make our relationship public? The problem was back to square one, but Shi Mengwan was especially concerned about this problem. If a man couldn't even let a woman stand by his side publicly and let everyone know that she was his girlfriend, what was the use of such a man? No. Zhang Haoze refused without thinking. There were still many dangers around him. This injury was just a warning. Shi Mengwan suddenly smiled, as if she wasn't surprised by this answer at all. She pulled her hand out of Zhang Haoze's hand bit by bit. Zhang Haoze, you're really a bastard. Without looking at him, Shi Mengwan turned around and went to pack her luggage. There wasn't much to pack. They were outside anyway. In less than 20 minutes, she had packed everything. She pulled her suitcase and walked past Zhang Haoze to look for Xiao Ji and the others next door. Zhang Haoze took a step to the side, wanting to block Shi Mengwan's path. Shi Mengwan looked at him coldly. Zhang Haoze, this competition is very important. Please move aside. Wan. Zhang Haoze didn't know what to say, but he couldn't let her know what had happened. Just now, you don't have to explain. She looked at his conflicted expression and could roughly tell what he wanted to say. Unfortunately, she didn't want to hear it. The problem between us isn't about your actions just now. It's about your actions, your attitude towards me. I don't mean to look down on you, but now is really not the right time to make it public. Yes, it wasn't suitable, it just couldn't be. Then when was the right time? When could it be? Did he have an answer? I'm afraid not. She felt tired and didn't want to continue. Forget it. You'll never understand. She glanced at him. I'm going to the competition. Make yourself at home. Pulling her suitcase, Shi Mengwan left the room without looking back. This time, the organizing committee had really put in a lot of money. The venue for the finals was actually an ancient castle. The ancient castle was provided by the president of one of the sponsors this time. The first, second, and third designers also had the chance to work for this company. It had always been a world-class clothing brand. Such an opportunity was an excellent opportunity for all the participants. However, Shi Mengwan didn't have such plans. Her goal wasn't even to promote her studio. After all, if she wanted to talk about fame, she already had her own regular clients in Lin City. She came just to prove her ability. To prove that she could do it. The 10 points for the competition were arranged in the rooms on the first and second floors of the villa. For the next few days, except for special circumstances, all the participants were not allowed to leave. However, all the electronic equipment in the room was available. When Shi Mengwan entered the castle, she also received the theme of the finals, First Love. When she received this theme, Shi Mengwan felt Xiaoji and Tong Yan looking at her worriedly. Sister Shi. Xiaoji looked as if the sky had collapsed. You've never been in love before. Why did you choose such a theme? The sweet one from before was still a little better. Sweetness didn't just refer to love. Family, friendship, the little warmth of society. In this life, there would always be times when one would feel sweet, right? But this first love? Xiaoji's face was inexplicably full of worry. Shi Mengwan glanced at Xiaoji and gently knocked her on the head. All right, think about how you can help me. Let's go. The room Shi Mengwan was assigned was on the second floor. There was a large balcony here. There was a sofa and a coffee table on the balcony. From the balcony, one could see the beautiful scenery in the distance, as well as the well-tended garden downstairs. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but sigh. This sponsor had really put in a lot of money. She sat on the sofa and looked at the beautiful scenery outside. She wasn't in a hurry to draw. First love? Her first love was Jean Hausa. But this first love, where did it begin? Now? Or more than 10 years ago? She picked up the black tea prepared by the organizing committee on the table. Shi Mengwan's heart flew back to the year when she was 12 years old. She and Jean Hausa depended on each other. When they met, it was when they were at their most miserable. She was actually a good girl. In the past, she, who had been strictly educated by Mother Shi, almost didn't dare to think that one day, she would have a relationship with a boy who was like a hooligan. But now, not only did it happen, but it also happened so unexpectedly. They were each other's comfort and support. She believed that if it weren't for Jean Hausa, she might have admitted defeat long ago and gone home. She also knew that if it weren't for her, her dear brother at that time definitely wouldn't have taken good care of himself. He would have fought everywhere, and then when he was injured, he would only casually treat his wounds. She once thought that if her dear brother was willing, she could stay with him like that for the rest of her life. But her dear brother didn't give her that chance. The heavens didn't give her that chance. After going around in circles, they could be considered to have met now. But some things were already the same, but the people had changed. Shi Mengwan thought of a certain scene and suddenly stood up. She walked to the table and took out a pen and paper. When Xiaoji and Tong Yan settled down and came in, they saw Shi Mengwan, who had already devoted herself to her work. She lowered her head and drew very seriously. This room happened to face the west. The sunlight shone in from the huge balcony, dyeing Shi Mengwan's body with a layer of gold. Xiaoji was shocked by such a scene. She couldn't help but take out her phone and quietly take a few photos of Shi Mengwan. After taking the photos, she logged into Shi Mengwan's Weibo. Song Seeking Studio didn't set up a Weibo. However, Shi Mengwan had one. Most of the time, she managed her Weibo by herself. Occasionally, when the company had activities, she would ask Xiaoji to post some activities. The picture attached to, during the finals, was the photo that Xiaoji had just posted. She even made a 9-grid grid. After posting the photo, she glanced at Tong Yan. Tong Yan also had some ideas at this moment. He went into the room and found a place to sit down. Then, he took out his tools. Xiaoji looked at the two of them and turned around to be in charge of logistics. Time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. The main color Shi Mengwan used this time was green, a faint green. What was first love? It was youth, it was budding, that moment of heartbeat. It was like a tender bud that had just grown in spring, just emerging. She still remembered how she felt back then. When she left her dear brother, she felt uncomfortable, conflicted, and painful. However, there was more joy, beauty, and a smile on her face when she recalled the past. This was what Shi Mengwan thought. She designed a total of 3 pieces of clothing. This was also the requirement of the competition. Every designer decided to submit at least 2 pieces of work. Shi Mengwan, on the other hand, drew 3 pieces in one go. The main piece was a dress. She used ogan yarn as the main fabric. It was a little hard. Because they didn't understand love, the feelings of young men and women were a little stiff. However, there were also some lighter green leaves dotted among them. First love was beautiful, but there were too many things that could distract a person. First love couldn't be the only one. If the two of them wanted to be together, there were too many misgivings. If they broke up, there would be too many external reasons. Shi Mengwan was very satisfied with this set of works. She poured all of her feelings into it. After the finished product was made, Shi Mengwan submitted the work and the design drawings together. The rest was out of her control. All those who had submitted their works could play around the castle for the rest of the time. She told herself to relax and played seriously with Tong Yan and Xiao Ji in the castle for a day. Finally, it was time to announce the results. The 10 people who participated in the finals were all experts. Shi Mengwan saw the other 9 works on the day of the announcement. She had to admit that the standards of the competition were indeed amazing. When the final rankings were announced, a pink dress designed by a local French designer won first place. The second place was an Italian designer, and the third place was a designer from Hong Kong. The colors used by the other party were quite bold. The design theme was like first love, brave and fearless. When Shi Mengwan saw those works, she knew that she probably wouldn't be in the top 3. After all, she had something on her mind and had too many worries. But to her surprise, she actually won the most special design award. She was 4th place. Shi Mengwan was satisfied. After the awards ceremony, the other designers came to congratulate her. That night, the organizers and the organizing committee held a celebration dinner in the castle. All the designers who came to participate had to wear the themed clothes they had designed. Shi Mengwan put on the green dress. She looked like an elf in the forest. When she entered the banquet hall, she attracted a lot of attention. At this banquet, there were many local fashion brands from Paris. There were clothes, bags, jewelry, and perfume. It was Shi Mengwan's first time seeing so many legendary figures. She was fine. No matter what, she had been to the Su family and Hua Jinyao's company a few times. It was the first time Xiao Ji and Tong Yan had been to such a place. The 2 girls didn't know where to put their hands and feet. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but laugh. Just as she was about to comfort them, the person in charge of the sponsor, Dixon, waved at her from the other side and asked her to go over. Shi Mengwan had no choice but to ask Xiao Ji and Tong Yan to find a place to stay and not run around. She went in Dixon's direction. Sure. Shi Mengwan didn't come over with an English name. They all called her by her surname. Dixon looked at Shi Mengwan with a faint smile on his face. Chapter 679. Was he also from China? Shi Mengwan was a little interested. Up until now, she was the only one from the mainland who had participated in the competition. She had chatted with the 3rd-place Hong Kong beauty for a long time, and the other party kept asking her to go to Hong Kong to play. She was already very happy to be able to meet a Chinese person, but there was actually a Chinese person now? Was it also a manufacturer from China? Or, as he spoke, Dixon took half a step to the side and looked behind him. Jean, let me introduce you. This is Miss Sher, also from Lin City. Her work this time is very good. It's very spiritual. Sure, this is Jean. He's also from Lin City, China. In your words, he's a fellow villager. Dixon smiled brightly, but Shi Mengwan's expression instantly stiffened. Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hauser, who suddenly appeared in front of her. For a moment, she thought there was something wrong with her eyes. Why was he here? Seeing that she didn't say anything, Dixon thought that she didn't know Jean Hauser's identity, so he explained further. Sure, although Jean is from China, he also has his own business in France, including some fashion brands. Dixon said two names, and Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hauser in surprise. He was wearing a white suit with a dark red pattern stitched from the collar to the shoulders. The close-fitting tailoring and such a design made him look a little more noble. She could even feel Jean Hauser's gaze landing on him when he stood up. However, she wasn't just paying attention to Jean Hauser's current appearance. Her mind was filled with the two names that Dixon had mentioned. They were two new fashion brands. Although the design was considered niche, it was already quite well known in the country and in Europe and the United States. Were these two clothing brands Jean Hauser's business? She lowered her eyes and thought of something from a long time ago. It was not long after she went to school. It was the day after she found out that her dear brother would still fight with others outside and get injured. She suddenly had an inspiration and drew a design that was still considered immature at that time. At that time, she took the design and ran to show it to Qiao Zhe. The young man looked at her with gentleness in his eyes. Dear brother, what do you think of this dress? Not bad. It's very beautiful. The youth wasn't stingy with his compliments. If Wan Wan wore it, it would be even more beautiful. Really? Big brother, you're not lying to me, right? Nope. I'm serious. As the young man spoke, he pulled her to his side and sat her down. His gaze fell on the painting in the young lady's hand, but he put his arm around her shoulder and pulled her closer to him. He liked her being close to him, and he liked being close to her. Shi Mengwan took the opportunity to lean on his shoulder and also look at the design drawing. Finally, she turned to look at the young man. Big brother. Can you help me in the future? Help you? Yeah, I'll draw and design clothes, and you'll make clothes. You'll open a big factory and sell the clothes I design to more people. The young man looked into her eyes. He didn't think that it would be a difficult goal for them to achieve now. Instead, he nodded lightly and said, all right. What Shi Mengwan didn't say was that at that time, dear brother would have something to do and wouldn't fight outside anymore. She knew that even though he was very good at fighting and rarely got hurt, he was still very good at fighting. However, she was still very worried about him and didn't want him to be like that in the future. Big brother. In the future, I will definitely draw a lot of beautiful pictures. At that time, there will definitely be a lot of people who will buy the clothes I design. At that time, you must help me, okay? Okay. Dear brother. Yes? In the future, when we earn money, we can move to a big house, and we can travel around the world. We don't have to stay here anymore. At that time, can you stop fighting with others? Okay. The young man pressed her body into his arms. He used a little too much strength. He smelled the young lady's scent on her body, and his eyes were firm. Dear brother. Every time you go out, I'm very worried about you. I don't like you fighting with others. Next time, you really don't fight with others, okay? Okay. Dear brother. You're so nice. The young lady smiled happily. The young man looked at the self-destruction on her face and forced himself to calm down. Then, he looked at her and said very firmly. I don't fight with others. When you grow up and become a fashion designer, I'll open a clothing company. I'll specialize in selling clothes designed by you. Okay. Then I'll wait for you. The young lady smiled brightly. At that moment, the dilapidated bungalow seemed to have welcomed a sky full of stars. Dixon's voice brought her back to her senses. Sorry, I was a little distracted. Shi Mengwan looked at that handsome face and forced herself to look away. Did Jean Hauser create those two clothing brands for her? Could she think like that? But looking at him, she couldn't link these two things together at all. Dixon acted as if he didn't notice the loss of composure on her face and continued to talk about Jean Hauser's identity in high spirits. These are all brands under Jean's banner. You're all from China. I think you two should have something to talk about. After Dixon finished speaking, someone happened to be looking for her. She excused herself to the two of them and left first. Only Jean Hauser and Shi Mengwan were left standing there. Shi Mengwan stood still. She thought about what Dixon said just now. Jean Hauser actually had a business in France? Didn't he run a technology company? What had he been doing outside all these years? What had he experienced? She couldn't help but feel a trace of curiosity. However, she forced herself to look away and nod at Jean Hauser. Congratulations. Jean Hauser stood beside her. A waiter happened to pass by. He picked up 2 glasses of champagne from the tray and placed one of them in Shi Mengwan's hand. Shi Mengwan looked at him for a while and finally reached out to take it. There's nothing to congratulate. She didn't enter the top 3 again. Jean Hauser's gaze fell on her. The extremely fresh green color contrasted with her snow-white skin. The top was a one-shoulder design that was tailored to fit her body. A leaf just extended to her shoulder, and the bottom was layered with light muslin. Jean Hauser gently clinked his glass with hers. In my heart, you're number 1. Shi Mengwan was stunned by his words. Her hand that was holding the glass stopped there and she just looked at him. Realizing that she was affected by him again, Shi Mengwan turned her face away. She didn't let herself sink any further. She casually took a sip of champagne. Standing next to Jean Hauser made her feel uncomfortable. She put the glass aside and turned around to leave. However, Jean Hauser put down the glass and held her hand. Shi Mengwan looked at that hand and then at the other people in the banquet hall. She lowered her voice and was a little anxious. Let go. The music in the hall changed at this moment. Jean Hauser looked at Shi Mengwan and reached out his hand to her. Shi Mengwan understood what he meant and took a step back. Let's go. Dance with me. As Jean Hauser spoke, he held her hand and led her to the dance floor in the middle of the hall. Shi Mengwan wanted to retreat, but his hand had already wrapped around her waist. He led her around the edge of the dance floor. Bit by bit, they slid into the middle of the dance floor. Being led by him like this, even if Shi Mengwan didn't want to, she could only dance and spin with his steps. After dancing a few steps, she realized that Jean Hauser's dancing skills were pretty good. She was a little surprised. Her dancing skills weren't considered good. After all, she wasn't a rich young lady. There weren't many opportunities for her to attend banquets. Now that Jean Hauser was leading her, she looked at Jean Hauser in front of her. There were more and more secrets about him that she couldn't figure out and couldn't see through. However, not only could she not let go of these secrets, but she also wanted to get closer and know more. Shi Mengwan's footsteps turned in a circle. This kind of thinking was very dangerous. She had to suppress it. Jean Hauser was very dangerous. She had to stay away. Her rationality kept reminding her, but when she looked at Jean Hauser's deep eyes, she could only dance with his footsteps. You're very beautiful today. Jean Hauser moved his face closer to Shi Mengwan's ear. He spoke in a soft voice, and the hot air he blew out was right next to her ear. Her ears turned red and she subconsciously shrank her neck. She wanted to avoid him, but she and Jean Hauser were already dancing. Where could she hide? Jean Hauser's hand around her waist slightly tightened, and she moved closer to him instead. Shi Mengwan had already made up her mind to stay away from him. His actions made her want to escape from his arms. Have you ever thought about cooperating with these big European and American brands? Promote your designs all over the world. The sudden voice above her head stunned Shi Mengwan. She looked up at him with a hint of shock in her eyes. Jean Hauser, have you never thought about it? Jean Hauser looked at her and said indifferently, if you want, whether it's Dixon or any other company, you can think about it. The information revealed by these words was too much. Shi Mengwan furrowed her brows. She looked up at Jean Hauser's face as if it was the first time she had met him. Jean Hauser, who exactly are you? Dear brother was 15 when he met her, and he was 16 when they separated. The two of them had been separated for 12 years. What exactly had Jean Hauser done in the past 12 years? What had he experienced? Was he really her dear brother? With his situation back then, it was really a little scary for him to have achieved what he had today in 12 years. Putting aside the two clothing brands that Dixon had mentioned just now, it was definitely not easy to be able to reach such a level abroad. After she met Xiao Qi, she specially went to investigate the technology company that she had mentioned. She also investigated Jean Hauser. Although their company's website didn't have a photo of Jean Hauser, the introduction on it was very clear. The technology company that Xiao Qi was talking about was founded by Jean Hauser. Now, its market value was countless times higher than when it was founded. With such ability and such methods, she thought of the young man who only knew how to fight back then. She really couldn't connect the person in front of her with that young man. Jean Hauser looked into her eyes and tilted his head slightly. A kiss fell on her lips just like that. His voice was very soft. I'm your man. Shi Mengwan's face suddenly turned red. She wanted to push Jean Hauser away, but she realized that he had brought her to the edge of the dance floor. The music changed at this moment. Jean Hauser took the opportunity to let go of her hand and brought her to the corner of the hall. As one of the invited guests, Jean Hauser also had a room in the castle. He brought Shi Mengwan upstairs. Shi Mengwan tried to break free from his hand a few times, but she didn't get what she wanted. When she went up to the second floor, she was surprised to find that Jean Hauser's room was actually arranged next to hers. Her body was brought in by him, and her hand grabbed the door handle. Jean Hauser, don't do anything rash. There were still so many guests downstairs, and Dixon was also there. Could it be that he was thinking? Jean Hauser looked at the resistance on her face and easily carried her body. With a tap of his toes, the door was closed. He pushed her against the door and gently caressed her collarbone with his big hand. I wanted to do that just now. As he spoke, he lowered his head and planted a kiss on the spot where his fingertips touched. Jean Hauser barely managed to retain some rationality. He didn't tear her dress apart, but the slow process of taking it off made Shi Mengwan's face turn red. Her body had already become unlike her own. She could only follow his movements to climb up or down. He was like a sharp sword, avoiding her, and she was the sea, containing his every attack. The moment he got off her, he didn't let go of her. Instead, he pulled her into his arms. Shi Mengwan couldn't move. She looked at the ceiling above her head, not quite understanding how things had turned out like this. She turned to look at him, and he was also looking at her. Shi Mengwan felt a little uncomfortable under his overly passionate gaze. When she shifted her gaze away, she saw his bare upper body. There was a scar on his abdomen, and it could be seen very clearly. This was the wound from a few days ago. The stitches had been removed, but the scar was still there. Previously, because of his engagement with Chen Feifei, Shi Mengwan had always forced herself not to care about him and not to care about him. Now that she saw this wound, she couldn't help but reach out and caress it. How did you get it? It was so long, and she didn't know if it was deep. It must have been very painful at that time, right? Are you concerned about me? Jean Hauser's voice sounded like there was a hint of a smile in it. No. Shi Mengwan wanted to retract her hand, but Jean Hauser grabbed her hand and pressed it against the wound. She couldn't pull her hand back, so he grabbed it and caressed it bit by bit along the lines of the wound. The feeling there wasn't smooth. After Shi Mengwan felt it from beginning to end, she suddenly retracted her hand. She flipped over and turned around. There was no way she wouldn't look at him. Jean Hauser didn't understand what was wrong with her. He wanted to turn her body right, but she stubbornly refused. He was very strong, but in the end, she was turned around by him. Only then did he realize that her eyes were red and there was a faint mist in them. Wan. Shi Mengwan lowered her head and didn't look at him. She remembered that the young man had promised her that he wouldn't fight with anyone again. But whether it was when she met him in the alley of the bungalow district or this time. In short, he went back on his word. He forgot his promise, just like how he forgot that he had promised himself that he would take care of her and protect her for the rest of her life. Wan. Jean Hauser called her again. Compared to the rudeness and fierceness he had when he was entangled with her on the bed just now, the way he called her name was extremely gentle. Shi Mengwan had the urge to cry, but she didn't want him to see her like this. She pushed him and got up to leave. However, she forgot that her body was still weak from the strenuous exercise. Just as she wanted to sit up, she fell back again. This time, she happened to fall into his arms. He just wanted to stop her, so her chin hit the top of his head. Shi Mengwan was in pain. The tears that she had been holding back just now fell uncontrollably. Her tears stimulated Jean Hauser. He got up and wrapped her in his arms. Wan. Shi Mengwan rarely felt so vulnerable. Now, she suddenly wanted to cry and felt uncomfortable. The emotions that she had been suppressing since her reunion with Jean Hauser seemed to finally be able to be vented. She raised her hand and suddenly punched Jean Hauser's chest. Bastard, you bastard. As she spoke, she punched him a few more times. Her strength was nothing more than scratching an itch to him. Jean Hauser didn't stop her and let her punch him. Shi Mengwan punched him many times until her hands were out of strength. She finally stopped and leaned her face against Jean Hauser. Her voice was very soft. Jean Hauser, you're a bastard. He only knew how to bully her. He had always been like this. Jean Hauser, you're a liar. He had clearly promised her something, but he couldn't do anything. If he wasn't a liar, then what was he? Jean Hauser, you're still a thief. He stole her heart, but he didn't want to take responsibility. He was really a thief. You bastard, you liar, you thief. Shi Mengwan wouldn't scold him anymore. She only said these 3 words back and forth. In the end, she was tired of fighting and scolding. In addition, she had been mentally and physically exhausted for the finals these few days. By the time Jean Hauser realized it, she had already closed her eyes and fell asleep on his chest. Even though she was asleep, her lips still seemed to be moving. He got closer and listened carefully. He heard the word bastard. Jean Hauser gently picked her up and laid her flat on the bed. He looked at her and gently caressed her cheek. There were still traces of tears there. He wiped away those tears one by one. Finally, he planted a kiss on her forehead. He wanted to lie down with her. Ever since Shi Mengwan left that day, he hadn't been idle for the past few days. He had a lot of things to do, but now, he just wanted to hug this woman and sleep for a while. However, as soon as he lay down, his phone rang. Before waking Shi Mengwan up, Jean Hauser quickly turned off the sound of his phone. Then, he got up and went to the bathroom to answer the phone. The news from the other side made his expression solemn. He seemed to have thought of something and spoke extremely calmly. I'll be right back. Prepare the plane. Walking out of the bathroom, Shi Mengwan was sleeping soundly. Jean Hauser put on his clothes and stared at her sleeping face by the bed for a long time. Finally, he turned around and left resolutely. After Shi Mengwan returned from France, the workload of the studio increased a lot. Although she didn't get the top 3, the most special design award and the 4th place in the competition were still very good. especially the Weibo post that Xiao Ji posted on her phone that day. She was called the most beautiful female designer. Now, in addition to the high order, many clothing companies came to ask her if she was interested in mass production. Shi Mengwan was too busy, so she rejected them for the time being. Most importantly, she remembered what Zhang Haoze said that day. Speaking of Zhang Haoze, it wasn't strange that she didn't see Zhang Haoze when she woke up the next day. He seemed to have always been like this. He came and went as he pleased. What was she to him? Did they break up like this? She didn't go back to her room for the whole night, and her phone was left with Xiao Ji. The next day, Xiao Ji and Tong Yan were looking for her like crazy. Shi Mengwan could only say that she was drunk yesterday and found a room to sleep. If it weren't for the fact that this was Dixon's castle, Xiao Ji and Tong Yan wouldn't have believed her so easily. After returning to Lin City, Shi Mengwan had been paying attention to the news of the Chen family in Lin City. She found that other than the news of the engagement last time, there was no other news. Shi Mengwan couldn't tell what she felt. She really wanted to look for Zhang Haoze, but she also wanted to use this opportunity to break it off. Soon, she wasn't in the mood to worry about Zhang Haoze. When Su Qingsang went to be an exchange doctor, there was an earthquake. Then, Su Qingsang lost contact. Shi Mengwan couldn't sit still anymore. She went to the Su family to look for Li Qianxue. It was only after she went to Rong City that she found out that Su Qingsang wasn't Xiang Caiping's daughter, but Li Qianxue's daughter. She really couldn't have imagined such a thing. Now that Su Qingsang was in trouble, she definitely couldn't go to the disaster area, but the Su family would have a way, right? Li Qianxue was also worried, but she received a call from Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao comforted her and said that he had already brought supplies to the disaster area and told her not to worry. No matter how anxious she was now, she knew that with her physical and mental state, going to the disaster area would only cause more trouble. No matter how worried she was, she could only trust Hua Jinyao now. Shi Mengwan couldn't be as calm as Li Qianxue. She and Su Qingsang had known each other for so many years. To her, Su Qingsang was like a sister. She also wanted to go to the disaster area to look for Su Qingsang. However, not everyone could go to the disaster area now. If Hua Jinyao hadn't donated a large amount of supplies and followed them to the disaster area, it wouldn't have been so easy for him. She thought about it, but she didn't know how to go to the disaster area and participate in the search for Su Qingsang. Finally, she thought of Zhang Haoze. She took out her phone and called Zhang Haoze, but no one answered. After staring at the phone for a long time, she decided to make a trip herself. The car stopped downstairs of the technology company where Zhang Haoze was. Shi Mengwan wasn't sure if she could find him if she went upstairs. Maybe he wasn't in the company? She wanted to leave, but her worry for Su Qingsang overwhelmed everything else. After entering the building, she was in no mood to appreciate the ultramodern decoration and some equipment that could only be seen in movies. She walked directly to the front desk and told the front desk that she was looking for Zhang Haoze. "You're looking for President Zhang? I'm sorry. If you don't have an appointment, we can't let you go up. Can you ask?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I really can't see President Zhang without an appointment." Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and was still thinking about how to go up and see Zhang Haoze. She heard someone calling her. Chapter 680. Mengwan? Xiao Qi's voice made her turn around. She was relieved to see an acquaintance, but at the same time, she felt a little uncomfortable. "Why are you here? Are you here for me?" Xiao Qi had been sent to the branch office by Zhang Haoze. Today, he happened to be here to report, but he didn't expect to see Shi Mengwan. "No." Shi Mengwan stood there, a little hesitant. She didn't know if she should tell Xiao Qi. "Then what are you doing?" "I'm looking for Zhang Haoze." Shi Mengwan looked at him. Her voice was a little obscure and a little shy. "But they said that I can't go up without an appointment." "You're looking for President Zhang?" Xiao Qi was stunned. He didn't seem to understand what kind of relationship Shi Mengwan had with Zhang Haoze. Yes. I have something to talk to him about. Shi Mengwan looked at Xiao Qi. She knew that she shouldn't, but she still said, "Do you have a way for me to see him? Come with me." He was doing well in the new company, so he still had some face in front of Zhang Haoze. Thank you. Shi Mengwan nodded. Xiao Qi didn't ask further and led her to the elevator. With Shorky leading the way, this one went very smoothly. When she went upstairs, Tang Hua happened to be there too. He was stunned when he saw Shi Mengwan. He glanced at Xiao Qi with obvious disapproval in his eyes. Xiao Qi was a little embarrassed. In fact, he didn't know what the relationship between Shi Mengwan and Zhang Haoze was. She has something to talk to President Zhang about. Assistant Tang, can you help inform him? He knew that Zhang Haoze had just finished a meeting and should be in his office. Tang Hua looked at him and turned to Shi Mengwan. He naturally knew Shi Mengwan. Wait a moment. Tang Hua entered the door. Xiao Qi looked at Shi Mengwan and wanted to ask several times. Sean, thank you. Shi Mengwan looked at him and remembered that she still owed him an explanation. If there's a chance next time, I'll tell you. It doesn't matter. Xiao Qi waved his hand. It doesn't matter if you don't want to tell me. I believe in you. Shi Mengwan didn't say anything, but there was a rare hint of emotion in her eyes. Her relationship with Zhang Haoze had almost become her own bitter journey. She couldn't tell her family, she couldn't tell her friends, and she couldn't even let others know. Although she was separated from Zhang Haoze, not only did she not get any relief, but she also felt more and more uncomfortable. Zhang Haoze was like a poison to her. She couldn't get rid of it. If he wanted to quit, he would feel the pain of being skinned and having his bones pulled out. A minute later, Tang Hua came out and glanced at Shi Mengwan. President Zhang asked you to go in. Shi Mengwan's heart was in her throat. She stood there and wanted to retreat for a moment. Xiao Qi didn't seem to notice that something was wrong with her. Then, Mengwan, I still have something to do. You can do as you please. Okay, thank you. Shi Mengwan thanked him sincerely. After Xiao Qi left, Tang Hua opened the door for Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan stood there, closed her eyes, and walked in. It was her first time in Zhang Haoze's office. The cold air brushed against her face, calming her nerves a little. Zhang Haoze's office was very large. The high space was still full of technological design. Shi Mengwan took a few steps and stood in the middle of the office. She didn't continue to go inside. Zhang Haoze was dealing with documents. It could be seen that he seemed to be very busy. There was a lot of information by his hand. Other than a laptop on the table, there was also a desktop computer. Both of them were turned on. The screen of the desktop computer was half facing the door. She could see the red and green lines on it. Zhang Haoze held a pen in his hand. He signed the document in front of him and put it aside. He didn't even raise his head. Come here. Shi Mengwan paused for a moment. Her footsteps were a little heavy. Zhang Haoze took another document. He raised his head and looked at her. Come here. Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth. She had the urge to turn around and leave. However, when she thought of the purpose of her visit today, she still lifted her feet and walked over step by step. When he walked behind the desk, Zhang Haoze seemed to be dissatisfied with her spending so much time. He stretched out his hand and pulled her onto his lap. Zhang Haoze, in front of her was Zhang Haoze's enlarged face. His dense kisses were like a net, trapping her in it. There was nowhere to escape. After the kiss ended, Shi Mengwan's hands and feet went limp. Her entire body leaned weakly against his chest. Realizing her purpose for coming here, she pushed against his chest and tried to stand up. Zhang Haoze held her hand, grabbed her waist, and turned her body to face him. Zhang Haoze. Shi Mengwan pressed her hands against his chest, and her breathing was a little rapid. I came to look for you for something. As Jean Hauser spoke, he held her hand in his. His calloused hand played with her fingertips one by one. It was clearly her hand, but Shi Mengwan felt like she was being played with. She wanted to pull her hand out, but he held her finger and put it into his mouth. What is it? Her finger was half bitten by him. Shi Mengwan wanted to retract it, but his grip was very tight. She became more and more uncomfortable, and her voice was a little intonated. There was an earthquake in S province. I want to go to the disaster area. But now, they won't let me go. Jean Hauser stopped biting her finger for a moment. He looked into her eyes. Why are you going there? Qing Sang is there. There's still no news of her. I'm very worried about her. TCH. Her finger was bitten hard by him. She felt the pain and quickly pulled her hand back. Jean Hauser looked at her with a deep gaze. His meaning was unclear. Shi Mengwan didn't know what was wrong with him, but she wouldn't forget her purpose. I heard that you can go in with the supplies. I want to know if you can. No. Jean Hauser directly refused. Jean Hauser? I can donate supplies, but I won't let you go to S province. There are still aftershocks there. It's very dangerous. It was rare for Jean Hauser to say a string of words in one breath. His voice sounded very calm, but the concern in his words was not less. Shi Mengwan refused to give in just like that. It's precisely because it's very dangerous that I want to go. Do you know that Qing Sang is my best friend? Hua Jinyao will naturally take care of her matters. You don't have to worry too much. Hua Jinyao won't let anything happen to her. He had seen Hua Jinyao and Su Qing Sang together. Hua Jinyao doted on his wife very much. He believed that he wouldn't let anything happen to Su Qing Sang. How can it be the same? Hua Jinyao was Hua Jinyao, and she was her. I can't tell what's the difference. As Jean Hauser spoke, he grabbed Shi Mengwan's hand and gently bit it again. Shi Mengwan was in pain, but this time, she couldn't even pull it back. Jean Hauser, I must go. I also said, you're not allowed to go. Shi Mengwan pushed him hard. At the same time, she pulled her hand out and took a big step back. Her movements were too big, and the back of her waist accidentally hit his desk. This was much more painful than being bitten on her finger. Her facial features were squeezed together. Jean Hauser quickly got up and wanted to check her waist. Where did you hit? Don't touch me. Shi Mengwan's temper flared up. She had already decided to break up with Jean Hauser. She came because she really didn't have anyone else to look for. However, with Jean Hauser's attitude, she knew that she couldn't count on him. She would think of another way. She ignored the pain on the back of her waist and turned to leave. Jean Hauser pulled her body over and fixed her in his arms again. He lifted her clothes and was about to check her injury. Let go of me. She didn't need his concern. Jean Hauser was a little angry because of her uncooperative actions. She was clearly injured, but she was still so stubborn. He pressed her body down and took a step back. She sat on his lap again. This was much more convenient. He lifted her clothes and found that the back of her waist had already been bruised. Her skin was fair, and such a large bruise looked especially glaring. Jean Hauser's expression didn't look too good. He pressed the internal line and asked Tang Hua to send the medicine in. No need. He hung up the phone. Shi Mengwan didn't want to accept this favor. It's just a small injury. She still had to think of a way to go to S province to find Su Qing Sang. She struggled to remember. Such an uncooperative action made Jean Hauser narrow his eyes. Looking at Shi Mengwan, who was so disobedient, he raised his hand and patted her crotch twice. Shi Mengwan's eyes widened. She couldn't believe that he actually hit her. You be obedient. As Jean Hauser spoke, he patted her again. Shi Mengwan's face was red. Half of it was anger, and the other half was embarrassment. No matter what, she was loved by her parents as she grew up. Other than that rebellious year when she ran away from home, she had always been a good girl. Her parents hadn't even touched a single finger of hers. Who knew that John Hauser, this bastard, would actually hit her but? John Hauser. Let go of me. She wanted to get up again, but John Hauser didn't let her. Tang Hua was very fast. In less than 2 minutes, he brought the medicine in. When he entered the door, he saw Shi Mengwan sitting on John Hauser's lap. Tang Hua's expression was strange for a moment, but it was only for a moment. He quickly returned to normal. He put down the medicine, turned around, and left. Before he left, he even considerately helped John Hauser lock the door. The sound of the door locking made Shi Mengwan inexplicably nervous. She remembered that John Hauser had already lifted her clothes again. He picked up the ointment at the side, opened it, picked out a little, and helped her apply it to her waist. His movements were considered gentle, but Shi Mengwan felt itchy, and her body unconsciously twisted. Don't move. John Hauser held her waist in place and held her waist with his big hand, not letting her move. Shi Mengwan forced herself not to move and let him apply the ointment for her. However, as he applied it, the movements of his hand changed. It was no longer lingering on her waist, but slowly moving down and down. It had already reached the edge of her dress. She was wearing a two-piece dress suit today, which definitely made it easier for him to move. Seeing that his fingers were about to reach inside her dress, Shi Mengwan grabbed his hand and turned to look at him. She resisted the urge to run away immediately. She stared at his face and said word by word, "I want to go to S province." John Hauser's hand stopped there. Her skin was smooth and delicate, making him feel a little reluctant to part with it. "I want to go to S province." She said it again, her voice even louder than before. John Hauser looked at the determination on her face, leaned over, and gently bit her lips. She was in pain, but she didn't move away. Instead, she placed her hands on the front of his clothes and said word by word, "John Hauser, did you hear me? I said I want to go to S province." John Hauser slowly retracted his hand and slowly moved it up. Finally, it landed at the butterfly bone behind her. "If I let you go, how are you going to thank me?" The hint in his eyes was too obvious. Shi Mengwan had been with him for more than half a year, so how could she not understand what he meant? She gritted her teeth. "How do you want me to thank you?" John Hauser reached out to lift her chin and looked her in the eye. "Don't break up." Shi Mengwan's face turned pale. She looked at him with a complicated expression. "Impossible. Then there's nothing to talk about." John Hauser let go of her hand. "Go. I still have a lot of work to deal with." John Hauser. Shi Mengwan didn't leave his lap. She was really worried about Su Qingsang. Other than this, anything else is fine. He clearly had a fiancé, and he clearly didn't lack women. Why did he have to treat her like this? "I don't want anything else, just this." John Hauser's words made Shi Mengwan even more discouraged. She looked at him and really didn't understand what he was thinking. "John Hauser, what kind of woman do you want? Why do you have to keep staring at me?" John Hauser stared at her face, gently retracted his hand behind her, and pressed his forehead against hers. "I just want you." His low voice carried a hint of heat, and Shi Mengwan trembled. But, you have a fiancé." Shi Mengwan forced herself to be rational and not be swayed by a few words from him. "I don't." John Hauser kissed the tip of her nose gently. "I only have you." Such a John Hauser was simply poison to her. Shi Mengwan trembled. She watched as John Hauser's face magnified in front of her. His lips moved from her forehead, to her eyelids, to her cheeks, and then to the tip of her nose. Finally, he kissed her lips again. She couldn't resist, and there was nowhere to escape. Unknowingly, the kiss on the road to philanthropy had changed. His kiss was urgent, forceful, and full of predatory aura. She had nowhere to run. Her body was carried by Jean Hauser. The moment she was suspended in the air, she was afraid of falling, so she instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck. She felt him carry her into a door on the side. When she entered the door, she realized that it was a lounge. The room was pure white. The room wasn't big, but it had everything. There was a bed, a small table, a wardrobe, and a bathroom inside. Her body was placed on the bed inside by Jean Hauser. As he approached, she pressed her hands against his chest. "I want to go to S province." She said it again. At this time, she still refused to give up. Jean Hauser's response to her was to kiss her lips again, not giving her a chance to speak again. The bed under her was clearly used for a short rest. But it was unexpectedly soft. Shi Mengwan had a feeling as if she was stepping on clouds. She always felt that she was rising higher and higher and floating further and further with his movements. That kind of floating and unreal feeling made her heart hang in her throat. She was a little afraid that she would fall. That feeling of fear made her cling tightly to him, unwilling to let go. Her actions made his eyes darken. He grabbed her waist and increased the strength of his plundering. She wanted to retreat, but he pulled her forward. There was no other way but to welcome everything he gave her. In the end, she fell into a deep sleep in extreme happiness. Although Shi Mengwan was very tired, she didn't sleep for long because she had something on her mind. She opened her eyes and realized where she was. She got up and quickly put on her clothes. Looking at the messy room, her face was a little red. This feeling was as if she had delivered it to his door. She went into the bathroom to wash her face. Looking at herself in the mirror, there was nothing wrong with her at all. After that, she was about to go out. Just as her hand touched the door handle, she heard a female voice coming from outside. "Brother Hao." That title stunned her, and she froze on the spot. "Qin Feifei?" "Brother Hao." Qin Feifei had a hard time catching Jean Hauser today. "Why didn't you go to the Qin Corporation today? I've been waiting for you there for a long time." Jean Hauser's gaze fell on the documents in front of him. He signed several documents in a row, but he didn't look at her. Qin Feifei was a little annoyed. She stepped forward and blocked the documents with her hand. "Brother Hao, can't you put aside your work first? Didn't you see that I came to look for you today?" In order to see her, she specially wore a new set of clothes and even went to do her hair. She had made so many changes that she thought he would see it. But he didn't see her at all. Jean Hauser finally raised his head and looked at her. "I can't go there today. I told Uncle." In fact, the Qin Corporation's business had long stabilized. Other than some particularly important cooperation and some planning meetings, he participated in the daily work. Whether or not he was there in the daily work didn't affect the results. "But, I want to see you." Qin Feifei's voice became more and more aggrieved. "You've seen me now." Jean Hauser's voice didn't have much impatience, but if one listened carefully, they could hear the coldness in his voice. Qin Feifei bit her lip. She stood there, looking extremely aggrieved. "Brother Hao. What did I do wrong?" Qin Feifei bit her lip and looked pitiful. "Why are you treating me like this?" She leaned forward and forced him to look at her. "Look at you, you've been ignoring me." Qin Feifei was really aggrieved. "I've been here for so long, but you only have work in your eyes. Can't you put down your work and accompany me?" She had known Jean Hauser for so many years. For so many years, she only had eyes for him. She treated him as her future husband. Everything was centered around him, and she was happy with his happiness. But after doing so much, Jean Hauser always treated her like a brother treating his sister. He was taking care of her, but he wasn't gentle. He was good to her, but he wasn't considerate. He still didn't know what she liked or didn't like, and he still didn't know what he wanted. No, or perhaps he knew, but he deliberately pretended not to know. Ever since she had confirmed her feelings, no matter how many men had expressed their goodwill over the years, she had turned a blind eye to all of them. She only had him in her eyes, and she hoped that he only had her in his eyes. But Jean Hauser didn't have her in his eyes at all. I'm busy with work. Jean Hauser's voice was very soft. If you feel bored, you can ask Shaoli to go shopping with you. You can travel outside and play. Anyway, you have a lot of time. Chen Feifei stood there as if she had suddenly reacted. Brother Hao, do you dislike me? Do you? You dislike me for not working, and you dislike me for idling around, don't you? Chen Feifei was actually also a highly educated person. She used to study at the most famous university in Lin City. Back then, in order to catch up with Jean Hauser and be worthy of him, who was a top student, she had put in a lot of effort. However, her health wasn't good. After graduation, Chen Yongchang didn't let her find a job, so she stayed at home. Now that she looked at Jean Hauser, she suddenly realized that the gap between her and Jean Hauser might be getting bigger and bigger. He might really not like herself like this. Brother Hao. I'll go to work at the company too. I'll work hard too. What do you think? Jean Hauser didn't answer. With Chen Feifei's personality, how could she stand the 9-to-5 life of an office worker? Feifei, stop fooling around. Go home. How am I fooling around? No matter what, I graduated from a university. Chen Feifei was angered by Jean Hauser's attitude. Why can't I enter the company? Brother Hao, do you not believe me at all? You don't believe that I can do it well, right? Jean Hauser didn't answer her question, but his attitude was tacit agreement. Brother Hao, you really don't love me. In your heart, do you think that I'm not worthy of you at all? Do you think that I'm useless? Do you think that I'm just a social bug? I didn't say that. Jean Hauser wanted to take her hand away and continue reading the documents. Chen Feifei was hurt by Jean Hauser's nonchalant attitude. She felt despair. After so many years, why didn't Jean Hauser have her in his eyes? Logically speaking, they were childhood sweethearts and had been living together since they were in their teens. This kind of relationship was naturally not something that those women outside could compare to. But he was so cold to her. She couldn't stand it anymore. She looked at Jean Hauser's face. He was undoubtedly handsome. More importantly, there was an enchanting aura on his body that made her unable to stop even if she wanted to. She looked at him for a long time. Suddenly, as if she had made up her mind, she walked around the desk and sat on Jean Hauser's lap. Brother Hao. Why? Why can't you see me? I just like you. Can't that be okay? Can't I like you? As Chen Feifei spoke, she put her arms around Jean Hauser's shoulders. She leaned over and was about to kiss him. Jean Hauser avoided it. He pushed Chen Feifei's body away and looked in the direction of the lounge. Chen Feifei didn't notice his gaze. She wanted to kiss him again, but Jean Hauser pushed her away again. Feifei, stop fooling around. Fooling around? It was that word again. Chen Feifei completely flared up. She stubbornly hugged Jean Hauser and refused to let go. How did I fool around? Brother Hao, how did I fool around? I love you so much. I only love you, but what about you? Why can't you love me? Why can't you look at me? Brother Hao. Tell me, what else do you want me to do? She was so emotional that Jean Hauser couldn't pull her away for a moment. She hugged him and kissed him all over the face without any pattern. Chapter 681. Jean Hauser looked at the door of the lounge and then at Chen Feifei. Chen Feifei had already lost control of her emotions. Brother Hao, I like you. I just like you. I love you. She was about to kiss his lips again, but he reached out and pulled her away again. Feifei, calm down. I'm very calm. Chen Feifei held Jean Hauser's face with both hands. I'm your fiancé, but why do you never see me in your eyes? Why? Brother Hao. She couldn't kiss him, and he wouldn't let her kiss him. Chen Feifei was in despair. She reached out and grabbed the front of his shirt. The hurt look on her face and the tears in her eyes made her look even more pitiful. I really love you, brother Hao. Can't you love me? Do you love me, okay? Zhang Haoze looked at Chen Feifei's face and finally lost his patience. When she pestered him again, he pressed the internal line. Soon, Tang Hua appeared. Hua, Feifei isn't feeling well today. Send her home. Brother Hao. Chen Feifei hooked her arms around Zhang Haoze's neck and refused to let go. I'm not feeling well. I don't want to go home. You know what I mean. Don't think about chasing me away just like that. Zhang Haoze didn't want to talk to her anymore. He waved his hand, and Tang Hua understood. He stepped forward and pulled Chen Feifei's hand. Miss Chen, President Zhang still has a meeting to attend later. You don't want others to see you like this, do you? Chen Feifei stood there without moving, and Tang Hua couldn't really act recklessly. One had to know that she was Chen Yongchang's beloved daughter. Miss Chen, don't make things difficult for President Zhang, right? Zhang Haoze looked at Chen Feifei expressionlessly. Feifei, you can go back first. Chen Feifei bit her lip. She felt that her dignity had been thrown to the ground. She looked at Zhang Haoze and sniffed, forcing herself not to cry. Okay, you don't want to see me. You have something to do later. I'll leave. But you have to go home and have dinner with me today. Otherwise, I won't leave today. Zhang Haoze's brows were tightly knitted. He looked in the direction of the lounge from the corner of his eyes and finally nodded. He agreed, and Chen Feifei finally felt that she was not so embarrassed. She took a step forward and stood in front of him. Brother Hao, I really like you. I promise you that I will work hard for you and become a better version of myself. But before that, you are not allowed to like other women. Did you hear me? After saying that, she tiptoed and kissed Zhang Haoze on the cheek. Zhang Haoze clenched his fists tightly and glanced at Tang Hua. Chen Feifei turned around and walked past Tang Hua. I don't need you to send me off. I'll go back myself. Brother Hao, I'll wait for you. After Chen Feifei left, Tang Hua breathed a sigh of relief. He could roughly guess what was going on, so he glanced at the lounge. Then he looked at Zhang Haoze. He was glad that the person inside was not as mischievous as Chen Feifei. Otherwise, there would be a good show to watch. After Tang Hua left, the office became quiet. Zhang Haoze walked to the door of the lounge. Just as he was about to open the door opened first. Shi Mengwan stood at the door for a long time. She didn't look at him. She walked past him and was about to walk out. Zhang Haoze stopped her. Where are you going? Shi Mengwan looked at him and realized one thing. It was a mistake for her to look for Zhang Haoze today. No, it wasn't just today. Every time she got involved with him, it was a mistake. She walked past him from the other side, and Zhang Haoze grabbed her hand. Where are you going? Home. Shi Mengwan didn't need to stay any longer. Can't I? Her appearance made Zhang Haoze inexplicably panic. He didn't want her to leave just like that. Aren't you going to S province? Will you help me go? Shi Mengwan stared straight at his face. She believed that he wouldn't let her go to S province at all. Zhang Haoze was silent. He indeed wouldn't let her go. Shi Mengwan knew that he wouldn't let her go. He was just keeping her hanging. Wan. Zhang Haoze. Shi Mengwan looked into his eyes and bit the tip of her tongue hard, forcing herself not to indulge in his deep eyes. I won't look for you in the future. I won't see you again. You already have Chen Feifei. So, please don't look for me. Her footsteps were firm. Zhang Haoze's heart trembled. He had a feeling that he was about to lose Shi Mengwan. He hugged her from behind and hugged her tightly. Don't go. Shi Mengwan stopped for a while, then she pulled Zhang Haoze's fingers one by one. Jean Hausa, don't be like this. Wan, give me time, Jean Hausa. Shi Mengwan suddenly raised her voice and struggled out of his arms. She stood in front of him and stared at his face with a burning gaze. Give you time? Tell me, how much time do I give you? A month? Half a year? A year? How much time do you need? How long do I have to wait before I can stand in front of you openly? Can you answer? She thought of Chen Feifei, whom she couldn't help but open a crack in the door. She didn't have the pride and confidence she had when she went to her studio. That Chen Feifei was a little woman trapped by love. What about her? How much better was she than Chen Feifei? For Jean Hausa. She also had no dignity and no bottom line. Jean Hausa was silent. His expression was very solemn. His lips moved, but he didn't say a word. Shi Mengwan already knew this would be the result. You can't answer. You can't answer at all. So let it be. Jean Hausa. I don't want to look like I have no dignity, and I don't want to become a lowly woman for love. If you still have a trace of pity for me, please let me go. The coldness and determination in her eyes made Jean Hausa's eyes flash with gloominess and complexity. He raised his hand and finally lowered it, clenching it into a fist. Wan. Goodbye. Shi Mengwan turned around and left. Every step she took was very firm. The moment the door opened, she heard Jean Hausa finally speak behind her. Don't go to S province. It's really not safe. Shi Mengwan's footsteps didn't stop. She left as if she didn't hear anything. She left. Jean Hausa punched the wall beside him. Tang Hua quickly came in again. Boss? He looked at Jean Hausa worriedly. Jean Hausa's back was facing him as he looked at the blue sky outside. After a while, he heard Jean Hausa's voice. Make the arrangements. Go to Qing City tomorrow. Tang Hua didn't ask further. Yes, I'll make the arrangements now. In the end, Shi Mengwan couldn't go to S province. It was the most tense time for the disaster relief. How could she go there so easily? She went to the Li family's villa a few times, and Li Qianxue was also very worried. However, she also knew that she would only cause trouble if she went. At the critical moment, she could only force herself to calm down. Fortunately, after waiting for 2 days, she finally received news that Su Qingsang was fine. Only then did Shi Mengwan's heart completely relax. Su Qingsang knew that her family in Lin City would be worried about her, so she called them one by one to tell them that she was safe and told them that Hua Jinyao was taking care of her now. Shi Mengwan knew Hua Jinyao's ability. With him around, she believed that she could worry less. After she was relieved, she heard that Su Qingsang had actually chosen to stay in the disaster area as a volunteer doctor. Even Hua Jinyao stayed behind. She sighed in her heart. She really admired Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao now. She couldn't do anything else. After thinking about it, she donated a sum of money to the disaster area. It could be considered as doing something for herself. Nearly a month later, Su Qingsang finally returned from the disaster area. Although she could contact her these days, Shi Mengwan had never been at ease. Fortunately, she had returned safely. Su Qingsang didn't stay in Lin City for long. After staying for a few days, she returned to Rome City. She could tell that after this time, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao seemed to have become closer. They had suddenly decided to get married. For a long time after they got married, Shi Mengwan was worried that Su Qingsang wouldn't have a good life. Now, it seemed that she could rest assured. She couldn't help but think of herself again. Jean Hausa seemed to have lost contact with her for more than a month. She was relieved that he didn't come. However, she couldn't hide the disappointment in her heart. She was the one who broke up with him, and she was the one who said that they wouldn't meet again. It was actually good that things were like this now. Shi Mengwan told herself that if she was given some time, she would eventually forget about it. even though she knew very well that it was very difficult. Time passed by for more than a month. Today, Shi Mengwan's studio welcomed another old acquaintance. Chen Feifei. She looked very different from the last time they met. Her long hair was still loose behind her head, but she was no longer wearing a dress or a suit. Instead, she was wearing a professional suit. She looked a little more mature and less naive. Miss Chen. Good afternoon. Seeing Chen Feifei like this, Shi Mengwan felt a little emotional. Love could make a woman change. Miss Chen, you look good. Really? Thank you. Chen Feifei was in a good mood today. I started to work, and I found that work is quite fun. Shi Mengwan didn't reply, and Chen Feifei didn't need her to. Help me pick out a dress. I'm going to a cocktail party tonight. Okay. Shi Mengwan nodded and brought Chen Feifei to the costume area. The outermost one was her first love, who had won first place in the competition. It's so beautiful. Chen Feifei looked at the dress. I'll take this one. Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment. Because this dress was for the competition, she wore it last time and brought it back after attending Dixon's banquet. After it was dry cleaned, it had been hanging here as a sample. There are still 2 more in this series. Miss Chen, why don't you pick another set? After all, this set is here as a sample. Can't I sell it as a sample? Chen Feifei liked this set. I think this set looks good. I'll take this one. But Shi Mengwan was a little conflicted. She thought that she had once worn this dress to dance with Zhang Haoze, so she didn't really want to sell it. Chapter 682. It's not about money. Shi Mengwan smiled appropriately. This is the work I won in the competition in France. I didn't intend to sell it. The work that won the prize? In other words, this is the only one? When Chen Feifei heard this, she was even more determined to win. Then I'll take this one. Miss Chen. Alright, aren't you guys doing business when you open the door? Chen Feifei looked confused. How can you not do business when you open the door? If you don't want to pay double the price, then I'll pay triple. Is that okay? Shi Mengwan didn't respond. Chen Feifei was a little dissatisfied. What's wrong with you? Aren't I advertising for you by wearing your clothes? When the time comes, more people in your studio will know about it, won't they? Do you know how to do business? Shi Mengwan couldn't argue with Chen Feifei, so she could only take off the clothes and ask someone to wrap them up. Chen Feifei swiped the card and glanced at Shi Mengwan. Miss Shi, the clothes you designed are actually quite good, but I don't think you guys know how to advertise. Next time, just advertise it. Shi Mengwan didn't respond. The studio's popularity was actually quite high now. After winning the award, there were still many online orders. She was wondering if she should hire a few more people. By the way, if you have a new model next time, you can call me. As Chen Feifei spoke, she took out a business card. Okay. Shi Mengwan took the business card from Chen Feifei. On it was written the manager of the Qin Corporation's customer service department. After sending Chen Feifei away, Shi Mengwan looked at the empty model and wasn't in the mood to think too much. She asked Xiao Ji to bring a set of clothes for the model to wear. A thought flashed through her mind. If Chen Feifei went to the reception, would Zhang Haoze go? If he did, would he see that dress and think of her? Shi Mengwan, who realized what she was thinking, quickly stopped that thought. You guys have already broken up. She told herself that since that was the case, then it had nothing to do with that person. Not long after she returned to the office, someone came to look for her. To Shi Mengwan's surprise, the person who came was Wan Xianyang. Why are you here? In fact, after returning from France, Wan Xianyang specially came to Lin City to look for her twice. Other than coming to her house to look for her, the messages and calls never stopped. Last time, he said that he had something to do in Lin City. She thought he was just joking. She didn't expect that he would really come. Can't I come? Wan Xianying handed the bouquet of roses to Shi Mengwan. This time, it was a bouquet of pink roses. Every time he came to look for her, he would send her flowers. Shi Mengwan looked at the bouquet of flowers and didn't take it for a long time. Wan Xianying, I told you, I know that you don't like me, so it's impossible for you to be with me, right? Wan Xianying spoke first, leaving Shi Mengwan speechless. I'm just giving you a bouquet of flowers. You don't have to be so nervous, right? Shi Mengwan watched as he forcefully placed the bouquet of flowers in her hand. She had no choice but to take it. Thank you. You're welcome. Wan Xianying smiled. You don't have to thank me. If you really want to thank me, why don't you accompany me for a meal? Wan Xianying, no matter what, I flew all the way from Rong City to look for you. Shouldn't you show your hospitality as a host? Shi Mengwan couldn't refuse him at all. In addition, the other party was Hua Jinyao's childhood friend. In the end, she nodded. Okay. Then, wait for me. I'll go change. It's okay. Beautiful women have to make people wait. Wan Xianying's words made Shi Mengwan feel uncomfortable again. She changed her clothes and came out, but the way Wan Xianying looked at her was a little strange. His gaze swept across her body, making Shi Mengwan think that there was something wrong with her. She followed his gaze and looked at herself. Very beautiful. His praise made Shi Mengwan feel uncomfortable. Let's go. Let's go. What do you want to eat? Anything is fine. Shi Mengwan wasn't picky about food. Wan Xianying sighed. It's very difficult for me if you're like this. I'm treating people to a meal, and I'm most afraid of hearing anything like that. Just as Shi Mengwan was a little embarrassed, Wan Xianying approached her and added, however, beautiful women have special privileges. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but laugh. This Wan Xianying was a very interesting person most of the time. Wan Xianying brought Shi Mengwan to Chaowen Courtyard. Shi Mengwan had been here a few times, but she didn't expect Wan Xianying to be so familiar with this place. Shi Mengwan thought that it would be awkward for a man and a woman to eat alone, but in fact, it wasn't at all. Wan Xianying was a very humorous person. He talked about some interesting things that happened when he went to Hong Kong to auction antiques. Shi Mengwan wasn't bored listening. He had a good sense of propriety and never said anything too excessive or made any requests. Although he occasionally made a joke or two, it didn't make people feel embarrassed. Shi Mengwan looked at Wan Xianying and had to admit that he was a very good man. Unfortunately, she didn't have any feelings for him. After dinner, when Wan Xianying and Shi Mengwan were about to leave, they met an acquaintance. I'll go say hello. Wait for me. Shi Mengwan wasn't surprised that Wan Xianying had acquaintances in Lin City. However, that person looked a little familiar. Later, she remembered that he seemed to be in an antique business in Lin City. His daughter had once come to her studio to order a dress. Thinking of Wan Xianying's business, it wasn't strange that he knew him. After exchanging pleasantries with him, Wan Xianying came back with an apologetic look on his face. Sorry to have made you wait for a long time, right? It's okay. Let's go. After sending Shi Mengwan to the apartment building, Wan Xianying watched her get out of the car and called out to her. Aren't you going to invite me up for a seat? Shi Mengwan became nervous because of his words. I'm afraid it's not convenient. I'm joking. Wan Xianying got out of the car and stood in front of her. It's the middle of the night. Even if you let me go up, I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself. Shi Mengwan felt a little embarrassed again. Wan Xianying, stop. Today's night is very beautiful to me. You don't have to say those disappointing words anymore. Okay. I won't say it. That's right. Wan Xianying turned around and picked up a small box from the back seat of the car. This is for you. This isn't appropriate, right? There's nothing inappropriate about it. Just treat it as a thank you for accompanying me to dinner. There's no such logic. You're treating me to dinner, but I still have to accept your gift. Shi Mengwan refused to accept it, but Wan Xianying stubbornly placed the small box in her hand. Don't worry, it's not a ring. You don't have to be so nervous. Wan Xianying. Shi Mengwan pushed the box back. You really don't have to do this. I'll be embarrassed if you do this. If you really feel embarrassed, how about you accompany me to a banquet tomorrow? A banquet? Shi Mengwan was stunned. What banquet? Don't be so nervous. Wan Xianying smiled. It's the Mr. Dong I met today. Tomorrow is his father's 70th birthday. My grandfather has some friendship with him. When he saw me, he invited me to attend. Logically speaking, should go, so can I trouble you to be my female companion? This isn't appropriate, right? How could that be? I don't think it's inappropriate. Or are you not willing to help me? Wan Xianying's attitude was too open and aboveboard. Shi Mengwan met the sincerity in his eyes and finally nodded. Okay. I promise you. Since Shi Mengwan had promised Wan Xianying, she would naturally prepare well the next day. Before she got off work, she picked out one of the dresses from the series that she had passed the semi-finals. The aqua blue gown had a calm color. It was very suitable for her to attend the birthday banquet. Xiao Ji knew that Shi Mengwan was going to attend the banquet, so she was even more excited than herself. She followed the other two assistants of the company and tormented Shi Mengwan. Her long hair was tied up at the back of her head, leaving two strands hanging by her ears. Coupled with a pair of high heels of the same color. She looked elegant and imposing. It wasn't time to get off work yet, but Wan Xianying came to pick her up. When he saw Shi Mengwan like this, Wan Xianying's gaze fell on her and didn't move away. I regret it. Wan Xianying stood there with a conflicted expression. I don't want to bring such a beautiful female companion out. I want to hide you. His words made Shi Mengwan's nervousness disappear without a trace. Thank you. You're also very handsome today. Wan Xianying was wearing a white suit today. The bow tie on his chest was dark blue. There was also a faint blue in the pocket on his chest. From this, it looked like the two of them were wearing a couple's outfit. Shi Mengwan felt that it was a little strange, but Wan Xianying was glad that he had chosen this set of clothes today. He was afraid that Shi Mengwan would lose face, so he didn't tease her about it. Let's go. Shi Mengwan was about to walk out, but Wan Xianying stopped in his tracks. He took out the small box from yesterday from his pocket. Opening it, there was a pair of blue diamond earrings inside. Look, don't we have a tacit understanding? The gown you chose is the same color as the gown I chose? As he spoke, he even looked at himself. It wasn't just the color of the earrings that matched, but the clothes also matched. In short, everything matched. Shi Mengwan couldn't answer him. Wan Xianying went forward and was about to put it on for her. There's no need, right? Don't reject me. Wan Xianying went forward and took out the pair of earrings. It really suits you. Just treat it as a thank you gift for accompanying me to the banquet. This person could always find so many reasons. Before Shi Mengwan could refuse, Wan Xianying had already put the earrings on for her. Shi Mengwan couldn't see her own appearance. Wan Xianying took a step back with obvious admiration in his eyes. So beautiful. I really don't want to bring you along anymore. What should I do? Although he said that, Wan Xianying still brought Shi Mengwan to the hotel where the banquet was held. When Shi Mengwan and Wan Xianying entered the banquet hall, there were already a lot of people there. When the two of them came in, they tried their best to keep a low profile, but they still attracted a lot of attention. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful, but they were unfamiliar faces. They didn't seem to be from Lin City's circle. Wan Xianying's antique shop was in Rong City. But he had been flying all over the world to buy antiques all these years. More importantly, his family had a long history. Although he was young in the antique appraisal industry, he was already very experienced. The host of today's banquet, Old Master Dong, had dealt with Wan Xianyang's family a lot, so he naturally knew him. When Old Master Dong's son, Dong Yi, saw Wan Xianyang coming over, he immediately came over. He met him yesterday, and he was also the one who invited Wan Xianyang to today's banquet. Xianyang is here? My dad is talking about you. Dong Yi was from the same generation as Wan Xianyang's father, so it was natural for him to call Wan Xianyang by his name. Old Master Cheng is thinking about me. Wan Xianyang noticed that Dong Yi's gaze swept over Mengwan. He smiled. Uncle Dong, this is my female companion, Mengwan. Hello, Uncle Dong. After greeting him, Wan Xianyang followed behind Dong Yi to congratulate Old Master Dong on his birthday. Although he came in a hurry, he had prepared a very sincere birthday gift. Old Master. Congratulations. After giving the gift, Wan Xianyang had a faint smile on his face. I wish Old Master good luck and longevity. You're too polite. Kid from the Wan family, I didn't expect Yi to not lie to me. You're really in Lin City. Yes, I have something to do. I heard that it's Old Master's birthday, so I shamelessly came over to ask for a drink. Old Master, please don't blame me. Ha ha ha, Yi, look at this kid's mouth. It's exactly the same as his father back then. That's right. Old Master, don't tease me. When I came, my grandfather asked me to say hello to you. Okay, also say hello to your grandfather for me. Tell him to come to Lin City to play when he has time. I don't dare to say anything else here, but the air here is pretty good. Okay, I'll definitely tell him. If there's a chance, let grandfather come to Lin City. After Wan Xianyang congratulated him, he introduced Mengwan. Old Master, this is Mengwan, my friend. Hello, Old Master. Mengwan was quite generous. I wish Old Master good health. May you live a long life. Okay. Old Master Dong smiled. He looked into the distance. My girl is about the same age as your friend. Kid from the Wan family, take your friend to play. You don't have to accompany an old man like me here. Wan Xianyang said a few polite words and was about to bring Mengwan to the dining table at the side. There was a commotion at the door. Mengwan was taken a step back by Wan Xianyang. With this step back, she faced the entrance of the banquet hall. Naturally, she saw who the people who came in at the entrance were. Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei. Chen Feifei happened to be wearing that gown. It had to be said that she looked very good in this gown. Chen Feifei's appearance was originally weak and pitiful. The light green made her look even more pure. Zhang Haoze, who was beside her, was dressed in a black suit. He was mysterious and elegant. When the two of them walked in, many people's gazes turned towards them. The two of them were quite famous in Lin City. Moreover, the news of Chen Feifei and Zhang Haoze's engagement had spread. Dong Yi went up to welcome them as usual. Before Mengwan and Wan Xianyang could leave, Chen Feifei and Zhang Haoze had already walked over. Mengwan and Zhang Haoze's gazes unexpectedly met in midair. Chapter 683. Mengwan forced herself to look away. Coincidentally, Wan Xianyang was also looking at her. He leaned close to her ear and said softly, "Are you bored?" "It's fine. We'll leave after a while. I'll treat you to a big meal later." Mengwan couldn't help but laugh because of his words. This person was really casual when doing things. He left as soon as he said he would. After being distracted by Wan Xianyang, Mengwan wasn't so nervous anymore. She took 2 steps back without leaving a trace and retreated behind Dong Yi and the others. Wan Xianyang smiled and retreated. This way, he wouldn't be eye-catching. After all, it was indeed impolite to leave without saying goodbye. Chen Feifei was surprised when she saw Shi Mengwan just now, but it was only for a moment. She was representing the Chen family and Chen Yongchang today. "Hello, Grandpa Dong." As Chen Feifei spoke, she handed over the gift in her hand. "I wish you happiness as vast as the East Sea and longevity as the South Mountain." "Good, good." Old Master Dong nodded repeatedly and looked at Zhang Haoze. He took a step forward. "I wish you good health and a long life." Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment. Zhang Haoze's congratulatory words were the same as hers. Although the blessings were the same over and over again, this feeling was indeed, Zhang Haoze had prepared another gift for Old Master Dong. He had also interacted with Old Master Dong a few times. It was a form of respect for him. "Good, good. You're very considerate." Old Master Dong liked to interact with the younger generation. Looking at these young people, he felt that he was young. "Since you're here, don't stand on ceremony. You're all young people. Go and play with the young people." As he spoke, he thought of Wan Xianying. He waved his hand and gestured for Wan Xianying to come over. "Kid from the Wan family, let me introduce you. You've been in Rong City all this time, so you might not know him. This is Zhang Haoze. He can be considered one of the outstanding young people in Lin City. Haoze, this is Wan Xianying from Rong City. His Gu Langxian is very famous in the country." "Old Master, you're too polite." Wan Xianying smiled and reached out his hand. "Hello, I'm Wan Xianying." "Zhang Haoze." Zhang Haoze reached out his hand and shook Wan Xianying's hand. He didn't know if it was Wan Xianying's imagination, but why did he feel that Zhang Haoze's handshake? Wan Xianying felt a little pain in his hand when he let go. Although he knew some kung fu and usually worked out, there was still a difference between him and Zhang Haoze, who came from a real fighting background. Seeing that someone had come over to congratulate Grandfather Dong on his birthday, he took Shi Mengwan to the side to avoid them. Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei also stood over. After leaving Elder Dong's side, the group of people inexplicably stood together again. "Nice to meet you. What kind of business does President Zhang do? Maybe we can work together if there's a chance." Wan Xianying had always been slick and never offended anyone. Among Hu Jinyao's childhood friends, he was the smoothest. "There will be a chance." As Zhang Haoze spoke, his gaze inadvertently swept across Shi Mengwan's face. He nodded slightly and said, "Miss Shi." What a coincidence. As soon as these words came out, the other three people present were shocked. Especially Shi Mengwan. She couldn't believe that Zhang Haoze actually greeted her. Chen Feifei couldn't help but take another look at him. Then, she went to hold Zhang Haoze's arm. "Brother Hao, do you still remember Miss Shi? Wasn't your clothes designed by Miss Shi?" Zhang Haoze said it casually. When Chen Feifei appeared in front of him wearing this today, she even shocked him. He thought that this set of clothes was different for Shi Mengwan and that she wouldn't be willing to sell it. Who knew that not only did she sell it, but she also sold it to Chen Feifei? Chen Feifei pouted and remembered that she had indeed mentioned it when she was wearing this set of clothes today. She felt a little annoyed. In her heart, all women were her potential rivals in love. She really didn't want Zhang Haoze to notice other women, even if it was just a name. Because of Zhang Haoze's words, Wan Xianying looked at Shi Mengwan. There was obvious admiration and surprise in his eyes. "I always knew that you were very powerful, but I really didn't expect you to be even more powerful." Shi Mengwan was a little embarrassed. She smiled faintly. "It's nothing. There's just a specialty in the industry." Seeing that Chen Feifei and Zhang Haoze were still standing there without moving, she looked at Wan Xianying. "I'm a little hungry. Let's go sit down." "Okay." Wan Xianying nodded and glanced at Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei. "Excuse me." They left. Zhang Haoze stood there with a gloomy gaze. Chen Feifei's hand was still hooked around his arm, so he retracted his hand without a trace. "Brother Hao. Let's go find a seat and sit down." Jean Hauser retracted his hand when Chen Feifei was about to hook her hand over again. The two of them went to their seats and sat down. "Brother Hao, there are really a lot of people here today. Not to mention anything else, Chen Feifei also saw Su Qinghui. One had to know that the Su family's identity wasn't ordinary. Usually, they wouldn't come to a banquet like the Dong families." Jean Hauser didn't hear Chen Feifei's words. He looked in Su Qinghui's direction. If he remembered correctly, Su Qinghui seemed to have gone out on his own. "Brother Hao? Are you listening to me? Eat." Jean Hauser's voice was indifferent. Chen Feifei gritted her teeth. Today, she wore a new dress and specially dressed herself up, but Jean Hauser just didn't look at her. This made her very discouraged, and her expression became more and more unsightly. "Brother Hao. She wanted to flare up, but this was someone else's place, so she couldn't go too far. She could only turn around and sulk, thinking that Jean Hauser would coax her. Who knew that Jean Hauser still wouldn't look at her, which made Chen Feifei quite angry. On the other side, Wan Xianyang kept teasing Shi Mengwan. He was afraid that she would feel uncomfortable in such a place, so he would find some interesting things to make her happy from time to time. Shi Mengwan was so amused by him that she really forgot about what happened before. There was a smile on her face. However, she didn't know that her smile became more and more gloomy in Jean Hauser's eyes. Halfway through the banquet, Wan Xianyang left with Shi Mengwan. Before leaving, she casually looked around the banquet hall and found that Jean Hauser and Chen Feifei weren't there. She quickly retracted her gaze and left with Wan Xianyang. Wan Xianyang was also a wonderful person. He left the hotel but didn't bring her home. Instead, he found a place to change out of the flamboyant gown he was wearing. Shi Mengwan looked at the t-shirt and jeans on her body and couldn't come back to her senses. "Where are we going? Guess?" Wan Xianyang kept her in suspense. When he put on his suit and gown, he looked like a successful person. However, when he changed into jeans and a t-shirt, he looked a little unrestrained. What surprised Shi Mengwan even more was that he actually brought her to the snack stall behind the university town. When Shi Mengwan got out of the car, she thought that there was something wrong with her eyes. I guess you haven't been here for a long time, right?" Shi Mengwan nodded. It had indeed been a long time since she came. She used to come with Su Qingsang. However, Su Qingsang was very busy. A medical student couldn't be compared to a fashion design major like her. She had to take a lot of exams. Even when she wasn't rushing for her thesis, she still had a lot of things to do. However, they still came here a lot of times. Shi Mengwan smelled the familiar smell in the air and really missed it. "Let's go. I heard that the oyster omelette at the first stall is especially delicious. You even know this?" Shi Mengwan was even more surprised now. Wan Xianyang smiled very proudly. "Of course, I did my homework." He brought Shi Mengwan to the stall inside. Shi Mengwan looked at the familiar stalls on both sides. It had to be said that her background made her feel that this kind of environment was more suitable for her. Those banquets with toasts and fragrant clothes looked elegant, but in fact, she really didn't like it. Shi Mengwan used to come here often, and Wan Xianyang had also done his homework. The two of them picked some delicious stalls and ate from the street. When Shi Mengwan ate to the end of the street, she felt a little full. "I'm so full. Do you want to go for a walk to digest your food?" Shi Mengwan looked at the time and shook her head. "There's no need, right? It's very late. I still have to work tomorrow." "That's a pity." Wan Xianyang sighed. "I still wanted to spend more time with you today. After all, I'm leaving tomorrow." Seeing that Shi Mengwan didn't feel any reluctance to part with him, Wan Xianyang clicked his tongue. "You're so cold. I've said so much. Can't you pretend that you can't bear to part with me?" Shi Mengwan couldn't pretend. Wan Xianyang, actually, you're a very good person, but stop. Wan Xianyang stopped her. As for me, I don't think I'm a good person, so I don't need you to give me a good person card. Shi Mengwan smiled. Well, then you're not a good person, but I am, so we're not suitable. Mengwan, you really know how to hurt me. When Wan Xianyang was in the direction of the parking lot, he took her in the direction of the parking lot. I'm really curious now. What kind of man do you want to be in your eyes? Could it be that you want to be a god? He had asked Su Qingsang many times, but Su Qingsang just refused to tell him, which made him extremely depressed. Zhang Hao's face flashed across Shi Mengwan's mind. She said self-deprecatingly, no, maybe not a god, but Satan. Ha 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 ha. Wan Xianyang really couldn't help laughing this time. What should I do? Mengwan, I really like you more and more. That's difficult. Shi Mengwan could tell that he was joking, so she also regained some calmness. Because although you're not a good person, you're not Satan. Wan Xianyang smiled even more brightly. The two of them walked to the parking lot, and it was almost time to stop. They got into the car. It wasn't far from Shi Mengwan's apartment. Not long after, they arrived at the apartment building. Shi Mengwan got out of the car and was about to go home, but Wan Xianyang stopped her. He got out of the car and took out the dress that Shi Mengwan had changed out of at the clothing store from the back seat. You haven't carried this yet. Thank you. Shi Mengwan thanked him. Remembering that the other party's earrings were still on her ears, she raised her hand to take them off. You don't have to return this to me. Wan Xianyang looked at Shi Mengwan. You've already rejected me, and now you're returning my things. You're too cruel to make me think about how I was rejected by you every day. You can give it to someone else. Shi Mengwan felt rude after saying that. But this is too expensive. I really can't accept it. Do you really have to be so polite with me? Then I really don't mind turning into Satan tonight. Since he said that, Shi Mengwan couldn't continue. She could only stop. Thank you. I should be the one thanking you. Wan Xianyang wasn't being polite. It's not that I haven't been to Lin City before, but I really didn't realize that Lin City was so fun. So you see, I should be thanking you. Wan Xianyang. All right. Go up. If you continue, I'm afraid I won't be able to resist going upstairs to ask you for a cup of coffee. This person was really, Shi Mengwan took a step back and wanted to leave, but Wan Xianyang suddenly called out to her. She stopped in her tracks, but he suddenly reached out and took a leaf from her head. It might have been stained just now. Thank you. All right, do you want to count how many times you've said thank you today? He suddenly moved his face closer with a teasing smile on his face. Maybe you can kiss me as a thank you gift. Shi Mengwan took a big step back because of his action. She didn't say thank you anymore and turned to leave. Wan Xianyang looked at her back and let out a long sigh. King Xiang had a dream, and the goddess had no heart. It really made him sad. He got into the car again and left. Naturally, he didn't know that on the balcony of Shi Mengwan's apartment, someone was staring downstairs. He had seen the intimate action between the two of them just now. Shi Mengwan went upstairs. Other than her bag, she was also carrying the clothes. She thought about what Wan Xianyang said just now. If she hadn't met Zhang Hao, Wan Xianyang would really be a good man. Unfortunately, but tonight's date was still very pleasant. She had been very busy these days. Especially after Su Qingsang left, there weren't many classmates who could contact her, and she didn't have many friends in Lin City. It had indeed been a long time since she went to the university town. She didn't expect Wan Xianyang to know. It was obvious that he came because he asked Su Qingsang. But this was considered attentive. She didn't feel anything for a man who pursued her with so much effort. Shi Mengwan laughed at herself in her heart. She was afraid that she would have to lose her memory one day and completely forget Jean Hausa before she could accept other men again, right? After entering the door, Shi Mengwan casually threw the dress on the sofa. She didn't notice that there was a figure standing on her balcony. She was tired after a long day. She went home to relax and directly stepped on the ground with her bare feet. She was too full at night, so she stretched, put down her bag, and went into the bathroom to take a shower. Halfway through the shower, she seemed to hear a slight click. She stopped and turned off the water. Just as she was about to go out to take a look, the bathroom door was pushed open. Shi Mengwan was shocked. She reached out to grab the bath towel, but she stayed under the shower. Whether it was the bath towel or the offensive weapon, they were all very far away from her. She took 3 steps to close the door, but the person outside had already come in. Shi Mengwan was shocked. She didn't have time to scream, nor did she have time to find cover. She only wanted to push the person out, but she saw the person's face. Jean Hausa? She was in a state of shock, and her breathing wasn't smooth. If it weren't for her strong willpower, she might not have been able to control her emotions. She looked at Jean Hausa, and Jean Hausa was also looking at her. She was covered in water, and her long hair was wet and draped over her head. Because she had been taking a shower just now, her fair skin was extremely beautiful crimson. He was wearing the suit he had worn at the banquet. It took Shi Mengwan nearly a minute to recover from the frightening environment. She looked at Jean Hausa, her eyes full of wariness. Why are you here? Get out. Jean Hausa didn't leave. Instead, he took a step forward. As he moved forward, Shi Mengwan retreated. However, she had just taken a shower, and the ground was covered in water. It was very slippery. She retreated in a hurry, and her feet were unsteady. Her body lost its balance and she fell backwards. Jean Hausa quickly supported her waist. Before she could stand firmly, her body was already in his arms. The water droplets on her body wet Jean Hausa's suit. Shi Mengwan placed her hands on his chest, wanting him to let go of her. Jean Hausa easily lifted her body and tilted his head. He didn't care that her face and body were covered in water, and kissed her lips just like that. Shi Mengwan's eyes widened, and she quickly struggled. However, it was useless. Jean Hausa's strength was much greater than hers, and his kiss was extremely fierce. Shi Mengwan's mouth was in pain and numb from his kiss. She was furious, and she opened her mouth to bite back at his lips. Jean Hausa stepped back so that she wouldn't succeed. He lowered his head and bit her neck hard. Shi Mengwan was in pain. She wanted to push Jean Hausa away, but he didn't let go. His teeth went deep into her flesh. Shi Mengwan's tears were about to fall. Jean Hausa let go of her mouth at this moment, but he didn't let go of her. He lifted her body again and pressed it against the wall at the side. Shi Mengwan's back hit the wall, and the cold tiles made her feel cold. Jean Hausa's arms in front of her were also cold because of the water. She shrunk her body and glared at him hatefully. Are you crazy? Jean Hausa stared at the teeth mark on her shoulder. His slender fingers stroked it and pressed hard. Tell me, where did he touch you? Shi Mengwan didn't understand what Jean Hausa meant at first. Jean Hausa firmly fixed her body against the wall, lowered his head, and bit her cheek. It wasn't heavy, but it hurt. Jean Hausa, tell me, where did he touch you? He saw that Shi Mengwan had already changed her clothes when she came back, and the first thing she did when she came back was to take a shower. He also saw that when they were downstairs, that damned Wan Xianyang was kissing and hugging Shi Mengwan. The reason why he thought so was purely because of the angle. He wanted to go crazy, but Shi Mengwan didn't intend to go crazy with him. Crazy, let go of me. You're not going to tell me? Jean Hausa nodded and pulled away her hand that had been covering his chest. Then I'll check it myself. Are you crazy? How could Shi Mengwan let him check? She struggled even more. Jean Hausa, let go of me. What right do you have to do this to me? Jean Hausa acted as if he didn't hear her. He stubbornly checked her body. First her cheek, then her lips. He had already kissed her just now. Now it was her arm. He lifted her arm and checked it one by one. When he saw a red mark on it, he pinched it. What is this? Crazy. Shi Mengwan refused to answer his question. Jean Hausa narrowed his eyes and lowered his head to make a mark on her arm, covering up her original mark. His movements were definitely not gentle. Shi Mengwan wanted to pull her hand back, but she wasn't his match at all. He changed her arm and didn't find the mark he thought he was looking for. He seemed to be a little disappointed. He went to check her body again. In order to wear a gown today, she didn't wear a traditional underwear. Instead, she used a bra scarf. If she wore that, it would naturally leave some marks. That circle of red almost hurt Jean Hausa's eyes. Shi Mengwan felt that he was really crazy. She felt pain and pushed him with all her might. She even reached out to hit his back. But it was useless. Jean Hausa didn't care about her ticklish strength at all. He was extremely stubborn. The water on Shi Mengwan's body quickly dried up. But the examination wasn't over so easily. She was like Jane Doe on a cross. Not only couldn't she escape, but she also had to let him examine her like this. She felt humiliated, but she couldn't break free. She couldn't get rid of him. After he carefully examined every inch of her body, he didn't seem to be satisfied. In the end, his examination changed. When her body was split open by him, her eyes were filled with tears as she glared at Jean Hausa. You're raping me. Rape? Jean Hausa sneered. He lifted her body up and put it down heavily. If you say so, then so be it. He leaned close to her ear and bit her earlobe. He said word by word, you dared to let that man touch you. I'm already being polite by not killing him. Crazy. Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth. Jean Hausa, you bastard. Change some new words. He increased his strength and his breathing became heavier. Otherwise, I'll treat this as a love interest. Unable to win against him, Shi Mengwan closed her eyes and turned her face helplessly. Everything seemed to have returned to square one. She was still the Shi Mengwan who became abnormal the moment she met Jean Hausa. However, Jean Hausa didn't notice. He grabbed her waist and pulled her body tightly into his arms. Stay away from that man. Don't see him again. Domineering, ostentatious, and full of declaration. She seemed to be able to feel his emotions and monopolize her. That wasn't love. Thinking of this, she felt even more pain. She felt tears seeping out of the corners of her eyes and falling down her cheeks to the ground. Jean Hausa was still moving. When he felt her tears, he stopped for a moment. Looking at Shi Mengwan, who had her eyes tightly closed, he suddenly leaned over and kissed away her tears one by one. This was a complete plunder. He not only wanted her body, but also her heart and everything about her. You're mine. Shi Mengwan couldn't say anything. She wanted to say that she didn't belong to anyone. She belonged to herself. But she couldn't open her mouth anymore. Jean Hausa didn't need her to speak. He lowered his head and kept repeating that sentence in her ear. With his movements, he was bound to make her remember it. Chapter 684. Shi Mengwan had been living with Qiao Zhe for more than a year. Ever since the last time she saw Qiao Zhe fight with someone, she had never seen Qiao Zhe fight with someone again. She knew that Qiao Zhe was actually hiding something from her. But she also knew that it was his life. Even if she wanted to change it, there was nothing she could do. As long as she told herself that she didn't see it, she could pretend that Qiao Zhe was living a normal life outside. They spent the Mid-Autumn Festival, Spring Festival, Lantern Festival, and Dragon Boat Festival together. After the hottest summer in Lin City, Shi Mengwan's studies had entered the male track. She was smart and willing to work hard. Even if she stopped for half a semester, she wouldn't be unable to keep up. In the blink of an eye, it was the National Day again. After the National Day, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. After Shi Mengwan started living with the young man, the two of them slowly lived a better life. Shi Mengwan went to school during the day and cleaned the house and did her homework at night. The young man went out during the day and returned home at night. When Shi Mengwan did her homework, he would read. Shi Mengwan once thought that the youth had always been a gangster outside, so he didn't know much. But what the youth read were history books and biographies of famous people. In the narrow living room, two people sat under the lamp, each with their own things to do. At night, the two of them had been sleeping on the same bed ever since the weather turned cold last year. Even when it was summer, neither of them said that they wanted to change places. Shi Mengwan's sleeping posture was actually very good, but it was very strange. Every time she slept, her back was facing the youth, and the two of them maintained a certain distance. But when she woke up in the morning, she would definitely be in the young man's arms. The young man put his hand on her shoulder and circled her in his arms, forming a protective posture. At first, Shi Mengwan would feel awkward and embarrassed. But as time passed, she no longer felt embarrassed. Especially after a stormy night. That day, the weather was especially bad, with thunder rumbling. The thunder was accompanied by lightning, plunging the entire Lin city into darkness. In the middle of the night, the electricity went out. Shi Mengwan was afraid. She subconsciously sought the young man's embrace. The young man held her in his arms and covered her ears with his hands. "Sleep, I'm here. Big brother. I'll stay with you." The young man's voice, which had gone through puberty, was a little hoarse. "Don't be afraid." She pressed her face against the young man's chest. For a moment, his heart beat louder than the thunder outside. That steady and powerful heartbeat, beat after beat, made her completely forget the fear and terror in her heart. He had the power to calm people, and she liked being close to him like this. From then on, Shi Mengwan no longer turned her back to the youth to sleep. Imperceptibly, the relationship between the two became even closer. It was almost the National Day, and Shi Mengwan's school was going to give her a 7-day holiday. She wondered if she could go out with Xiao Zhe for 2 days. She had been in Lin City for so long, but other than that time when she went out to watch the fireworks, she had not gone anywhere seriously. The youth did not object to her suggestion. He thought about it and remembered that there was a Qin mountain in Lin City. It was famous because there was a huge rock on it that looked like a zither. Shi Mengwan had heard of that place. Some of her classmates were from nearby. Because this was the first time she went out with the young man, even if it was to the city's scenic spot. Shi Mengwan was also very happy. She asked her classmates in advance how to get there. "I'll take a bus." On National Day, she prepared some snacks and drinks and went out with the young man. The scenery on Qin Mountain was beautiful. Other than the huge rock that looked like a zither, there were a few other wonders. At that time, the two of them didn't have a camera, so they couldn't take photos. However, Shi Mengwan smiled very happily and was very satisfied. Her stamina wasn't good, so she was exhausted after climbing the mountain for a short while. When the young man went down the mountain, he looked at the sweat on her forehead. He turned around and bent down, gesturing for her to get on his back. Shi Mengwan wasn't willing. "I'm very heavy. I can walk by myself." "Dear brother, let's go." The young man just didn't move. He lowered his body and insisted on Shi Mengwan getting on. Shi Mengwan had no choice but to get on the young man's back. On National Day, there were many people on the mountain. The young man carried Shi Mengwan on his back, but his footsteps were very steady. After coming down from the mountain, the two of them waited for a long time, but they didn't see a bus. After Shi Mengwan and Xiao Zhe discussed it, they unanimously decided to walk 2 stops to a place where there was a bus. The two of them had just walked 1 stop when they realized that they might have gone the wrong way. They were still a distance away from the real foot of the mountain. By the time they reacted, a few people had already come in front of them and blocked their path. Shi Mengwan was behind Zhang Haoze. Seeing that those people were frightened, she shrunk her body behind the young man. The young man looked at those people and narrowed his eyes. Kid. Your followers aren't by your side today, right? I want to see how you can be so arrogant today. Xiao Zhe blocked Shi Mengwan behind him and looked at the people in front of him. The corners of his lips curled up with a mocking smile. He turned around and looked at Shi Mengwan. Go over there and hide. I'll be right there. Shi Mengwan was scared and couldn't help but grab the hem of the young man's clothes tightly. Xiao Zhe patted her hand, signaling her not to be afraid. She quickly ran to the side and hid behind a tree. There seemed to be 8 people, but the young man was only one person. Shi Mengwan was extremely worried. However, she saw that the young man was fighting 1 against 8. He wasn't afraid of the punches and kicks that were landing on his body at all. He countered every move. Shi Mengwan's heart was in her throat. She watched as the young man fought back. She also suffered a lot of blows. Her eyes were red. The young man's fists had been accumulated in actual combat. His fists hit the flesh and hit the vitals. 3 or 4 people had already been beaten to the ground by him. The remaining people became angrier, and their counterattacks became more and more powerful. The young man didn't notice and suffered a few more blows. Shi Mengwan became more and more worried. At this moment, a few people appeared out of nowhere. Those people were different from the hooligans just now. Each of them was carrying a stick and a steel pipe as thick as a thumb. Shi Mengwan's eyes widened as she watched the group of people rush towards Xiao Zhe and start fighting. At first, Xiao Zhe was still able to withstand 1 or 2 blows. Later, his hands and body were hit several times by the stick, and his figure began to stagger. Shi Mengwan knew that she would only cause trouble if she went over, but when she saw someone swing that long steel pipe at Xiao Zhe's head, she couldn't help but shout. Dear brother, be careful. Her shout made Xiao Zhe avoid that blow. However, it also made other people notice her direction. Soon, a few hooligans rushed towards her. Xiao Zhe was anxious. Without thinking, he ran in her direction, but there were too many people on the other side. They surrounded him and he couldn't come over for a while. Shi Mengwan casually picked up the stones on the ground and threw the stones at them when they rushed towards her. However, she was young and didn't have much strength. Other than 1 stone that hit her, the rest of the stones were all empty. The hooligan who was hit by her was enraged. He rushed towards Shi Mengwan and threw a punch. The punch was blocked by Xiao Zhe, who was rushing over. Xiao Zhe protected her behind him. When the other party rushed over, he pushed her and told her to run quickly. Where could Shi Mengwan run to at this time? In her anger, she picked up the wooden stick that had fallen to the ground and waved it around. That kind of disorderly fight didn't have any effect at all. Soon, she was surrounded by a few hooligans. The youth desperately wanted to run in her direction, but it was useless. Shi Mengwan was still beaten in the end. Shi Mengwan was a little girl. When had she ever suffered this? Her body was knocked back a few steps and fell to the ground. The remaining hooligans weren't people who had tender feelings for the fairer sex. Those sticks swung towards Shi Mengwan. At first, she could still protect her head with her hands. Later, she was hit on the head and felt dizzy. She forced herself to tell her dear brother to run. But another blow struck her on the head. She completely lost the ability to resist. The youth wanted to rush over, but a hooligan from before took out a knife and stabbed it at the youth. Dear brother, Shi Mengwan's heart was burning with anxiety. She desperately wanted to save her dear brother, but it was useless. She was hit on the head again, and she started to feel dizzy. Before she fainted, she saw her dear brother dodge the knife, but he didn't dodge the steel pipe waved by a hooligan behind him. His body also fell down. Dear brother, she wanted to scream, but she couldn't. She could only let the darkness pull her consciousness away. When she woke up again, she was already in the hospital. Beside her were the worried father Sher and mother Sher. They had been looking for her for more than a year. They had even put her on the missing persons website. She was clearly in Lin City, but her parents didn't know. She didn't know how she got to the hospital. Later, she heard that someone had called the police. When the police arrived, she was already there. Other than her, there were also a few injured hooligans. Sher Mengwan was rescued by the police and brought to the hospital. They found her parents and informed the Sher couple to pick her up. When she woke up, it had been 3 days since the attack. She asked her parents where her dear brother was. But no one knew where he was. Even the police said that there was no such person. Not only that, but those hooligans also said that they had never met Xiao Zhe. Xiao Zhe seemed to have disappeared from the world. No matter how she asked or searched, there was no information about Xiao Zhe. The police even told Sher Mengwan that there was no one called Xiao Zhe in Lin City. She didn't believe it and insisted on the police investigating. They found a few people called Xiao Zhe, but none of the information matched. She could only ask the police to investigate again, but no one believed her. She didn't have a photo, and she couldn't find a witness to prove what she said. Everyone only treated her as a child. After that, she was brought back to town by her parents. She kept begging her parents to let her find her dear brother. But Lin City was so big. Even the police said that there was no one, so her parents wouldn't care. No one believed her words, and no one listened to them. Even if she wanted to find her dear brother, no one would help her. Most importantly, after running away from home this time, Sher Mengwan's mother was scared by her. She even ignored the fact that she only had 2 daughters and ran to have a vasectomy. She said that she wouldn't have a 3rd child and used this to beg her not to leave home again. In the end, Sher Mengwan had no choice but to listen to her parents and stop thinking about coming to Lin City to find her dear brother. However, she couldn't restrain her longing for Xiao Zhe. Every night, every sunrise, every festival, she would think of the young man who protected her behind him. That kind of longing didn't fade with the passage of time. Instead, it became clearer and deeper. She missed him crazily. However, she didn't expect that when they met again, the two of them would reach such a stage. Her dear brother had changed his name and was no longer the same person. Not only did he not care for her at all, but he also hurt her again and again. Zhang Haoze looked at Sher Mengwan, who was sleeping on the bed, and a flash of guilt flashed through his eyes. He lost control yesterday, and in the end, Sher Mengwan fell sick. Her body was already wet, and he was so reckless. In the end, she fainted because of him. Even though he dealt with it in time, wiped her hair clean and cleaned her body, Sher Mengwan still fell sick. He called her to call the doctor. She had a high fever of 39 degrees. The doctor gave her an injection to reduce the fever, but her temperature didn't drop immediately. After the doctor left, Zhang Haoze went to the bathroom and wrung a towel over her head. The towel was wet and dry, cold and hot. However, Sher Mengwan didn't wake up. During this period, Xiao Ji and Xiao Qiu from her studio called to look for her. Zhang Haoze picked up the phone and didn't care how they would react, and they heard a man answer Sher Mengwan's call. He directly said that Sher Mengwan was sick and couldn't go to work for the time being. Zhang Haoze called Tang Hua again and asked him to send the work over. After hanging up the phone, he sat down by the bed and his gaze fell on Sher Mengwan. Her face was abnormally red because of the fever. Her breathing was also a little heavy. Even though she was asleep, her brows were tightly furrowed. "Dear brother," in a daze, he seemed to hear her murmuring. When he got closer, he could hear clearly that she was calling out, "Dear brother." Zhang Haoze's eyes were deep. He reached out his hand and gently caressed Sher Mengwan's cheek. The fever was intense, and the temperature was much higher than usual. The moment his hand touched it, perhaps because Sher Mengwan felt waves of coolness, her furrowed brows even relaxed a lot. "Dear brother," Sher Mengwan felt like she had had a long dream. In the dream, she wasn't forced to separate from her dear brother. There weren't those hooligans who came looking for trouble, and there wasn't Jean Hausa who made her sad. There was only her dear brother who had always been by her side and protected her. She dreamed that she had opened a studio and set up a company. She dreamed that her dear brother had started a business with her. She dreamed that they had been together since they were young. She also dreamed that she and her dear brother had finally gotten married and walked into the auditorium together. But on their wedding day, just when she was about to marry her dear brother, Chen Feifei rushed out of nowhere. "Brother, how is mine, you shameless mistress? You stole my man. You're shameless. You're despicable." The wedding became noisy because of Chen Feifei's arrival. All the guests who came to watch the ceremony looked at them as if they were watching a farce. I'm not a mistress. She was the one who met Jean Hausa first. How did she become a mistress? Shi Mengwan was shocked. She wanted to defend herself, but no one listened to her. She saw her parents' disappointed faces and the shocked expressions of her friends and relatives. Even her best friend, Su Qingsang, looked at her with pity. "Wan, give up on him. Give up on him." Those voices and those people's gazes were like knives that made her feel a lot of pain. She woke up with a scream, but found that her hands and feet were weak. Not only that, but her entire body was covered in sweat. She looked as if she had been fished out of the water. "You're awake?" A hoarse male voice sounded. She turned her head and saw Jean Hausa guarding by the bed. He didn't look very well. There were faint bruises on his chin, and his eyes were bloodshot. Seeing him, Shi Mengwan also recalled why he was here. As soon as she spoke, her voice was very hoarse. Jean Hausa brought over a cup of warm water at the right time, helped her up, and fed her to drink it. She wanted to refuse, but her body, which had just had a fever, really didn't have much strength. Her throat was uncomfortable, so she couldn't refuse. She drank all the water in the cup. The warm water entering her throat finally made her feel better. She looked up at Jean Hausa again. "Are you hungry? There's porridge in the kitchen. It's hot. Let me bring it over for you." Jean Hausa's voice could be considered gentle. Shi Mengwan looked at him. Before she could stop him, he had already gone to bring the porridge. Shi Mengwan was really hungry. She naturally didn't know that she had slept for 2 whole days from the time she woke up from her fever. She didn't usually get sick, so when she got sick, her reaction was very severe. Jean Hausa brought the porridge in. He helped Shi Mengwan sit up and scooped a spoonful of porridge into Shi Mengwan's mouth. Shi Mengwan tilted her head and avoided his hand. Jean Hausa, her voice was hoarse, and she looked rather powerless. "Why haven't you left yet? Eat the porridge first." The spoon in Jean Hausa's hand was still there. "You've been sick for 2 days. You have to eat." Shi Mengwan's brows were tightly furrowed. With her current condition, he could naturally guess that she was sick. She didn't forget who the culprit was that caused her illness. "Jean Hausa, I don't want to see you. Get out." She hadn't recovered from her illness, and her voice and face were all weak. When she said this, she didn't have any aura at all. Jean Hausa still maintained his previous posture. "Drink the porridge first. We'll talk after you finish. You leave first. I'll naturally drink after you leave." Shi Mengwan turned her face away and stubbornly refused to drink. "You drink first. I'll naturally leave after you finish." Jean Hausa's words made Shi Mengwan angry. She couldn't help but glare at him. However, even if she was healthy, she definitely wouldn't be able to suppress him in terms of aura, not to mention that she was sick now. As soon as she opened her mouth, Jean Hausa fed the spoon in his hand into her mouth. She couldn't say anything. She was forced to swallow the porridge in her mouth. Before she could speak again, the second spoon had already been fed to her. Just like that, Shi Mengwan finished the bowl of porridge under half-forced circumstances. When she saw the bottom of the porridge, she also recovered some energy. "I've finished it. Can you leave now?" Jean Hauser put down the bowl and wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he took out a tissue from the bedside table to wipe Shi Mengwan's mouth. Shi Mengwan avoided his actions. "Jean Hauser, I really don't want to see you." Jean Hauser's hand that was holding the tissue stopped in midair. Shi Mengwan's gaze was fixed on an unknown point in front of her. Her head was still a little dizzy, and her body was also soft. She couldn't exert any strength. However, there were some things that she had to say. "You already have Chen Feifei. Why are you still looking for me?" Not giving him a chance, she smiled bitterly. "Yes, you want to say that you and Chen Feifei aren't that kind of relationship. You want me to believe you and give you time. Right? But why should I believe you? Why should I give you time? You and she can appear in front of everyone. You and she can stand under the sun and receive everyone's blessings. But what about me and you? Jean Hauser, what can I do with you? For example, on an occasion like yesterday, do you dare to introduce me as your girlfriend to everyone? Do you dare?" She finally looked at him. Her voice was slightly hoarse and her eyes were dim. "You don't dare." Jean Hauser's brows were tightly furrowed. He opened his mouth to speak, but Shi Mengwan didn't give him a chance. "You don't dare to let people know that I'm your girlfriend. You don't dare to let people know that there's a relationship between us. You can go out with Chen Feifei, but you can't see me go out with other men. You humiliated me and hurt me. Jean Hauser, I'm a human being, not a doll." After saying so much in one breath, Shi Mengwan's breathing was a little ragged. She placed one hand on her chest and kept calming herself down. "Jean Hauser, the past. I can treat it as my mistake. It's my mistake. I gave you the chance to hurt me again and again. But I've already paid the price. Jean Hauser, can you let me go?" Her face was pale, and she looked pitiful and weak. She was completely different from her usual bright and charming self. Jean Hauser felt his heart tremble. He looked at Shi Mengwan and couldn't react for a moment. His surprise fell into Shi Mengwan's eyes. She thought that he still didn't want to let go just like that, and her eyes were a little red. "Jean Hauser, I'm really tired, very tired. I don't want to continue. Can I? You don't want me to fall out with you, do you?" It was rare for her to be so stubborn. "I think if Chen Feifei finds out about our relationship, she'll probably be unhappy, right?" Jean Hauser's expression changed slightly. He thought of Chen Feifei's usual methods. What happened to that Ling Shui from before? If that happened to Shi Mengwan, he suddenly didn't dare to think any further. Shi Mengwan saw that his face was pale and knew that he definitely didn't dare to let Chen Feifei know. The corners of her lips curled up, and she smiled mockingly. "You can go." Shi Mengwan was really uncomfortable. She felt tired and uncomfortable. She shrank back into the blanket and turned her face away. She didn't look at Jean Hauser. "I'm very tired. I want to rest." She closed her eyes. In fact, after sleeping for 2 days, she didn't want to sleep now, but she didn't want to see him even more. The room was very quiet. She didn't move, and Jean Hauser didn't move either. She could feel that he was still sitting there, and she felt uncomfortable. She wanted to chase him away. But she knew that she didn't have the strength now, and she wasn't his match. Many thoughts flashed through her mind, from when she was young until now. From when she reunited with Jean Hauser until now. Finally, there was that dream. Chen Feifei pointed at her nose and scolded her for being a shameless mistress dream. Her eyes were a little sore, and she felt a little uncomfortable. She resisted the urge to rub her eyes, but in the next second, she felt an extremely gentle kiss on her forehead. Chapter 685. Her body immediately stiffened to the extreme, and she didn't dare to move at all. How could someone like Jean Hauser say something like sorry? For a moment, she thought there was something wrong with her ears. How was that possible? She must have heard wrongly. It must have been. While her thoughts were running wild, her hand was wrapped by a thick and warm palm. The kiss that was as soft as a feather fell again. This time, it fell on her eyelids. "I'm sorry." Those 3 very soft words sounded again. This time, they were even clearer than before. She didn't dare to move, but her trembling eyelashes betrayed her current emotions. She forced herself not to open her eyes. The excessive restraint made her hands clench into fists by her side, and her eyes were a little sore. But it was only for a moment. After thinking for a while, she suddenly opened her eyes and met John House's. Their eyes met, and Mengwan's almond-shaped eyes were cold. "Jean House, I don't need you to say sorry. I just want you to leave this place." Her voice was very soft, but her gaze was very firm. She really didn't want to continue being entangled with him like this. "Wanwan? You can go." Mengwan said those 3 extremely calm words. Half of it was because she was sick, and the other half was because she was tired. She should have ended this entanglement long ago. It was just that she really missed it too much, and she was too greedy for the warmth and care that her dear brother had brought her. Jean House didn't answer her. He pulled the blanket higher for her. "You're still sick. Rest first." "Jean House, don't you understand?" Mengwan looked at him with a look of resistance. "With you here, I can't rest well at all." Jean House's brows furrowed again. Just as he was about to speak, his phone rang. He picked it up without thinking much. Mengwan was so sick that she was in a daze. She didn't react at first when she heard the familiar ringtone. It wasn't until the word "auntie" rang in her ears that her eyes widened like thunder. She wanted to sit up, but Jean House was already talking to Mother Sure on the other end of the phone. "Auntie? Hello." Mengwan almost didn't dare to imagine her mother's reaction on the other end of the phone. "Jean House," she lowered her voice and gestured for Jean House to return the phone to her. "I'm Jean House, Wanwan's boyfriend." Jean House looked into her eyes and said firmly. Mengwan covered her eyes with one hand. "She's still sleeping." "Yeah, I caught a cold when I came back yesterday." Jean House had been answering Mengwan's calls for the past few days. It was just that she didn't have many phone calls. Previously, Xiao Ji had called because she had called too many times. Jean House knew that it was a call from the studio, so he answered it for her. Mengwan originally thought that she could escape for a while, but Jean House's words made her fall into great despair. "Yes, it's my fault. I didn't take good care of her." Mengwan raised her head and glared at Jean House. She hated his shameless behavior to the extreme. "Should I ask her to answer the phone?" "All right. I'll ask her to call you back when she wakes up." He didn't know what Mother Sure said on the other end of the phone. Jean House glanced at Mengwan. "Okay, this weekend, right? I will definitely pay them a visit." Jean House, Mengwan's lips moved, and she almost screamed. She was shocked by Jean House's shamelessness. She even forgot about his self-introduction. He said he was her boyfriend? Mengwan didn't have time to think about Jean House's words. She was already shocked by his next words. "Thank you, Auntie. Don't worry, I'll bring Wanwan back with me." "Okay. Okay. Goodbye." As soon as Jean House hung up, Mengwan ignored her weak body from just being sick and suddenly went forward to grab it. She glared at him. Her body was still weak, but she raised her hand and pointed at the tip of his nose. You, who allowed you to agree?" This was too much, really too much. She was so angry that she didn't expect Jean House to do this. Compared to her anger, Jean House was much calmer. "Auntie said that she asked me to bring you home this weekend." "I don't want to." Mengwan didn't want her parents or family to know about her relationship with Jean House at all. Jean Hausa, get out. If you want to go back, go back. I won't go home with you. Not only would she not go home with him, but she even wanted to beat him up now. I'll go back. Jean Hausa nodded and didn't seem to object. All right, then I'll choose a time to visit Auntie and Uncle. Jean Hausa. Shi Mengwan threw her phone to the side and reached out to grab Jean Hausa's sleeve. What exactly do you want? Didn't I say? Accompany you home to meet your parents? Meet my parents? In what capacity? Your boyfriend. Shi Mengwan nodded. My boyfriend? Are you sure? Yes. There was nothing to be uncertain about. You're my boyfriend. Who is Chen Feifei to you? Jean Hausa's expression didn't change, but a complicated look flashed across his eyes. She's nothing. Heh. Nothing at all? Isn't she your legitimate fiancé? I'm not engaged to her. That was just a one-sided agreement between Chen Yongchang and Chen Feifei. He didn't agree. If he could, he even wanted to pull out and retreat. But now wasn't the time. Shi Mengwan smiled, but that smile didn't reach her eyes. Ordinary people change their hearts, but they say that the hearts of old friends change easily. For the first time, she didn't refute his words, but the meaning revealed and it was enough. Jean Hausa looked at her and reached out to hold her hand, but she avoided it. You go. Wan. Jean Hausa wasn't angry at her attitude. If I leave, who will accompany you home? Shi Mengwan chuckled. She didn't seem surprised by his question at all. I don't need you to accompany me. I'll tell my mother that we broke up. Jean Hausa's face darkened because of her words. He didn't speak and just looked at her. It was rare for Shi Mengwan not to back down. She just looked at him. Their gazes met in the air, and neither of them was willing to back down. Shi Mengwan swallowed her saliva and forced herself to calm down. Jean Hausa, you said you wanted to accompany me home. You said you wanted to accompany me to see my family. Do you know what it means for you to go home with me? Shi Mengwan's voice was a little hoarse. Her head was still a little dizzy, and her body was also soft. She couldn't exert any strength. If you go home with me, it means that you're willing to separate our identities. It means that you're willing to marry me and marry me. Jean Hausa, she stared into his eyes, and the mockery on her lips was hard to hide. Are you sure? She didn't believe him at all. He knew. Jean Hausa suddenly reached out and held her hand. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. You should rest first. Jean Hausa, if there's anything, we'll talk about it after you recover. Don't avoid the topic. I won't let you accompany me back to see my parents. You should sleep first. As Jean Hausa spoke, he touched her forehead with his hand. There's still a little fever. I might need another injection. Jean Hausa. You rest first. I still have some business to deal with. When I'm done, I'll come and accompany you. Jean Hausa, no matter what Shi Mengwan said, Jean Hausa just didn't answer her question. She felt that all her strength was like hitting cotton, and it didn't have any effect. She was only concerned about being angry at Jean Hausa's words, but she didn't notice that Jean Hausa was much gentler to her today than before. He was also more talkative, and his face and voice were full of gentleness. Unfortunately, Shi Mengwan's mood wasn't right, so she didn't realize this at all. In the end, Shi Mengwan couldn't chase Jean Hausa out of her apartment. Her constitution had always been very good, and she rarely got sick. Therefore, she never knew that her occasional illness would be so serious. After Jean Hausa walked over, she fell asleep again because she was too tired. In a daze, she felt that someone had been guarding her. The towel on her forehead was changed every now and then, and she felt much more comfortable. She actually knew in her heart that the person guarding her was Jean Hausa, but so what? Nothing would happen between her and him. However, she didn't expect that after sleeping for one night, the next day, the sky had changed. Yesterday, Jean Hausa told Mother Sure that she was sick. Mother Sure was extremely worried. Although she had never heard of the name Jean Hausa, she was worried because she had never heard of him. Shi Mengwan never told her what she did outside or who she met. She felt that Xiao Qi was quite nice to her, but Shi Mengwan didn't like him. She was really anxious. It wasn't that it had to be Xiao Qi. But if Xiao Qi could even agree to the condition of marrying into her family, then he would definitely treat Shi Mengwan well in the future, right? What about this Jean Hausa? Where did he come from? How did they meet? How long had they been together? What did he do? She wanted to know all these questions, but Jean Hausa didn't explain it clearly on the phone. Therefore, after sleeping for a night, Mother Sure, who was overly worried, felt that she couldn't wait for Jean Hausa to bring Shi Mengwan home on the weekend. The next morning, the people in town happened to be driving to Lin City. After Mother Sure packed up, she told Father Sure to stay at home and take care of Shi Mengru. After all, Shi Mengwan was in the 3rd year of junior high. Mother Sure, who was about to take the high school entrance examination, didn't want her daughter to be distracted at all. She had been to Shi Mengwan's apartment before. Usually, when she had nothing to do, she would get someone to deliver things to Shi Mengwan. So she went straight to her door. When she came, Shi Mengwan had just woken up. Jean Hausa asked someone to cook porridge. Yesterday, it was plain porridge. Today, he asked someone to cook fish porridge. It was light and nutritious. It's still a little hot. Be careful. Jean Hausa brought the porridge to Shi Mengwan, but Shi Mengwan didn't appreciate it at all. I'm not eating. Take it away. Shi Mengwan, who had slept for 2 days in a row, finally recovered a little. Although she still didn't have much strength, she could get out of bed. Get out. Wan. Jean Hausa placed the porridge on the bedside table. The expression on his face was rarely gentle, as if he was coaxing a child. You haven't recovered from your illness yet. Eating something light will help you recover. Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hausa as if he was an alien. This Jean Hausa was completely different from what she remembered. She even wanted to ask him if he was possessed. Come, I'll feed you. As Jean Hausa spoke, he picked up the bowl of porridge and scooped a spoonful into her mouth. Shi Mengwan looked at him like this, but without thinking, she waved her hand. Jean Hausa wasn't prepared for Shi Mengwan's attack, and the porridge in his hand flew out. The bowl shattered, and the porridge splashed all over the ground. Some of it even splashed onto Jean Hausa's body. There was silence in the air. Shi Mengwan didn't expect herself to do such a thing, and she was stunned for a moment. However, she didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. If he had left earlier and not pretended to be affectionate here, she wouldn't have done such a thing. She thought so in her heart, but it was difficult for her to maintain her calm expression. She could only turn her face to the side and force herself not to look at him. Jean Hausa looked at Shi Mengwan like this. His gaze was deep and his expression was a little complicated. His deep eyes couldn't tell what he was thinking for a moment. Shi Mengwan waited for a long time, but she didn't hear Jean Hausa leave in a huff. She couldn't help but quietly turn her face. Unexpectedly, Jean Hausa squatted down and picked up the fragments on the ground. Shi Mengwan was shocked again. She wanted to chase him away again, but she saw the obvious stains on his clothes. She lowered her head again, thinking about how to get rid of Jean Hausa, and how to make him never bother her again. It was at this time that Mother Sure came. When there was a knock on the door, Shi Mengwan was shocked. Who would come to her place at this time? It couldn't be Su Qingsang. She was in Lin City. Could it be Little Ji? Or could it be Tong Yen and Little Chiu? Shi Mengwan didn't want them to see Jean Hausa. She wanted to get out of bed in a hurry, but Jean Hausa pressed her body down. Don't move. There are fragments on the ground. Don't hurt your feet. Go away. Shi Mengwan couldn't sit still. I don't need you to care. Just because there were fragments here didn't mean there were fragments on the other side. Shi Mengwan stubbornly wanted to get out of bed, but Zhang Haoze forcefully pressed her body down. Don't move. He glared at her. Her stubbornness really gave him a headache. If you don't want me to do anything to you, don't move. You're shameless. I'll go open the door. As Zhang Haoze spoke, he stood up straight and walked out. You're not allowed to go. Shi Mengwan wanted to stop him, but her voice didn't have any momentum at all. Secondly, it was too late for her to stop him in this situation. When Zhang Haoze saw Mother Shi standing at the door, he recognized her as Shi Mengwan's mother at a glance. Mother Shi was also a great beauty. He could see her demeanor when she was young. Most importantly, she looked somewhat similar to Shi Mengwan. Auntie, you're here? She didn't expect that the person who answered the phone would really be a man. This time, Mother Shi was a little stunned. Even though she had heard it once on the phone, it was another thing to see it with her own eyes. She stood at the door and forgot to enter. She just looked at Zhang Haoze. Why are you here? Where's my daughter? Chapter 686. Mother Shi looked at Zhang Haoze with a probing gaze. Facing her gaze, Zhang Haoze was much calmer. Hello, Auntie. Yes, I'm Zhang Haoze. Wan just woke up and is inside. Zhang Haoze took a step back as he spoke and gestured for Mother Shi to enter the door. Mother Shi entered the house, but she wasn't in a hurry to see her daughter. Instead, he sized up Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze? She didn't expect Zhang Haoze to be such a handsome young man. Look at his clothes and the way he talks. There was also the feeling that came from his body. Such a man was actually with her daughter? However, Mother Shi's hesitation didn't last long. She was still carrying bags of things in her hands. Zhang Haoze took the initiative to take them and place them on the coffee table beside him. Auntie, do you want to see Wan? Okay. Mother Shi decided to see her daughter first. Zhang Haoze followed behind Mother Shi into the room. As soon as he entered the room, he remembered. There was a pile of broken pieces on the ground, as well as the porridge on the ground. That messy scene did not look good at all. Zhang Haoze was a little awkward. Mother Shi looked at him and then at Shi Mengwan. Her eyes were instantly on high alert. Mom? When Shi Mengwan saw Mother Shi appear, she held her forehead with her hand and felt that it was really over. Why are you here? She hadn't fully recovered from her illness, so her voice sounded weak. Mother Shi was very worried, but looking at the mess on the ground, she went down first. Lie down first. We'll talk later. Mother Shi stepped forward. She was used to cleaning up. Even if he wasn't familiar with this place. In just a few moments, the floor was cleaned up. He was afraid that Shi Mengwan would step on the debris when she got down, so he carefully scanned the room and cleaned it completely. Then, he sat in front of Shi Mengwan's bed again. After a while, Zhang Haoze scooped another bowl of porridge and placed it on the bedside table. Auntie, you came at the right time. Wan hasn't had breakfast yet. Mother Shi was very old. When she saw the mess on the ground, she knew that something had happened between the two of them. She glanced at Zhang Haoze with an unfathomable expression. Mr. Zhang, right? Could you please go out first? I want to talk to Wan for a bit. Of course. Zhang Haoze nodded and left after glancing at Shi Mengwan. Only Shi Mengwan and her daughter were left in the room. Mother Shi picked up the bowl of porridge and looked at her daughter with a little heartache. Why are you sick? Why didn't you tell me? Didn't you know that I would be worried? How can people not get sick from eating grains? It's not a big deal. Shi Mengwan reached out to take the bowl, but Mother Shi didn't let her and directly fed her a spoonful of porridge. Mother Shi focused on feeding the porridge, and Shi Mengwan focused on eating the porridge. After a while, she saw the bottom. Shi Mengwan looked like she didn't want to drink anymore, so Mother put down the bowl. Tell me, what's going on? Mother pouted and looked outside the door. Nothing, that's all. Mengwan didn't want to say more. She didn't expect Zhang Haoze to pick up her call, nor did she expect Zhang Haoze to be bumped into by Mother. Either way, it was not a situation she wanted to see. She didn't know how to answer her mother's question. Your boyfriend? Why haven't I heard you mention this before? How long have you known each other? Where is he from? What does he do? He even went on a blind date with Xiao Qi during the New Year. At that time, she didn't know this person yet. It seemed like she met him later on. Mom, are you checking my household registration? Shouldn't I check my daughter's boyfriend? If Mother didn't see that Mengwan was still sick, she would have poked her in the head to see what she was thinking. Are you going to say it yourself, or do you want me to go out and ask him? Mom. Mengwan was a little annoyed. She was thinking about breaking up with Zhang Haoze. She had already made up her mind. Who knew that her illness would give Zhang Haoze a chance? It wasn't that she wasn't angry, but she couldn't reveal anything in front of her mother. Mom, his name is Zhang Haoze. I haven't known him for long. He runs a company. Haven't known him for long? Mother wasn't an idiot. You haven't known him for long, and you've already let him enter the house? Are you living together? Mom. Mengwan's face was red. She was too embarrassed to answer. Can you stop asking? How can I not ask? Tell me, this child. Mother was also anxious. Ever since Mengwan was young, other than the time she ran away from home, she had never worried about her. She also knew that Mengwan had always been proud. The last time she said that in front of Grandma she probably had to do it. But looking at Zhang Haoze, how could he look like a man who was willing to marry into the family and let his child take someone else's surname? Mengwan probably couldn't control such a man. Mengwan, what's going on with you? Mother was referring to the mess when she came in. Why did these two people look a little off? Mom, can you leave it alone? Mengwan was really annoyed. She wanted to get rid of Zhang Haoze, but she didn't know that not only did she not get rid of him, but she also got herself deeper and deeper into it. It wasn't easy for her to make up her mind, but who knew that such a thing would happen again? You child. Mengwan had been stubborn since she was young. Mother wanted to say a few words to her, but she knew that this child couldn't be too serious. If you don't want to say it, then you can rest first. What do you want to eat for lunch? Mom will make it for you. Anything. Mengwan really didn't mean to go against Mother but she was also in a mess right now. She really didn't know what to say. Mother looked at her and sighed silently. She took the bowl and went out. Zhang Haoze was in the living room. He seemed to be on the phone. Hearing Mother come out, he hung up the phone. Mother put the bowl in the kitchen and looked at the kitchen. There was no smell of smoke. It seemed that they didn't cook much. Zhang Haoze stood at the kitchen door. Auntie, have you eaten? I've eaten. Mother looked in the direction of the living room. Zhang Haoze understood and the two of them walked outside together. Mother sat down on the sofa and gestured for Zhang Haoze to sit down as well. Compared to usual, Zhang Haoze was sitting very upright. His hands were on his knees, and he looked like he was sitting upright. Mother brows twitched slightly, and she sized up Zhang Haoze again. Her eyes were long and deep. Although she tried her best to restrain herself when she looked at people, she was still very imposing. Mother was from a small town. The most powerful person she had seen in the past was only the county head of their county. Today, when she saw Zhang Haoze, she had a feeling that the person in front of her wasn't an ordinary person. How old is Mr. Zhang this year? Auntie, just call me Haoze. I'm 29 years old this year. Where does Mr. Zhang work? Mother didn't answer him. This form of address was still a little unfamiliar and polite. I've opened 2 small companies of my own. In addition, I also have a small business under my name. Jean Hauser spoke modestly, but Mothershire wasn't as relaxed as he thought. Instead, her gaze became more and more wary and distant. Shi Mengwan had been beautiful since she was young. She was afraid that the man in front of her had bad intentions. When did Mr. Jean and Wanwan meet? I've known Wanwan for a long time. Mothershire was stunned for a moment. She recalled what Shi Mengwan had said to her before. You've known each other for a long time? But Wanwan didn't have a boyfriend during the new year. If she didn't know that Shi Mengwan didn't have a boyfriend, why would she arrange for her to go on a blind date with Xiao Qi? I met Wanwan last year, but we only got together recently. In other words, you haven't been together for long? Jean Hauser didn't avoid Mothershire's question. Instead, he was quite calm. I haven't been together for a long time, but I feel that 2 people aren't together based on the length of time. Some people don't understand each other even after being together for a lifetime. But some people can hit it off at first sight. It can be seen that the depth of a relationship can't be measured by the length of time they've known each other. What do you think? Mothershire reluctantly accepted Jean Hauser's explanation, but she asked, then, according to Mr. Jean, you're sincere about Wanwan? Yes. Jean Hauser nodded. His answer was extremely firm. Mothershire's expression was a little more relaxed than before. Her gaze fell on Jean Hauser and swept across him. Finally, as if she had made up her mind, she spoke softly. Mr. Jean, has Wanwan told you about our family's situation? I wonder what you're referring to, Auntie. I don't think Wanwan will tell you. Since that's the case, I'll tell you. Mothershire's greatest regret in her life was that she didn't have a son, but after having 2 daughters, that regret wasn't a regret anymore. In her heart, nothing could compare to her 2 daughters. My husband, Wanwan's father, is the eldest in the family. There are 2 more brothers. After I married her father, I only gave birth to Wanwan and her younger sister. When I gave birth to Wanwan's younger sister, Wanwan's grandmother was very unhappy and wanted me to send Wanwan's younger sister away to give birth to another son. At that time, Wanwan was very unhappy. Because of this, she even ran away from home to protest. Jean Hauser's eyes darkened when he heard this, but it was only for a moment. Soon, he sat there expressionlessly and listened to Mothershire. After she ran away from home, her father and I slowly got over it. What son? How can he be more important than a daughter? When Mothershire said this, she thought of her daughter's wandering time outside for more than a year, and her expression didn't look good. After Wanwan returned home, her father and I also gave up on the idea of having another child. It's just that we don't want to have another child, but Wanwan's grandmother doesn't think so. She briefly recounted what Shi Mengwan said, and Grandmother Shi came looking for her that day. Mothershire had been paying attention to Jean Hauser's expression. That's how it is. Jean Hauser was expressionless, and Mothershire couldn't figure out what he was thinking. Wanwan agreed. If she finds a partner and asks the male lead to marry into her family, the child she gives birth to will have Wanwan's surname. Mothershire paused for a moment and realized that Jean Hauser was still expressionless. She could only continue, I know that a normal man wouldn't agree to such a condition. I don't mean anything else by saying so much. I just want to say that if you agree, then you can continue dating Wanwan. If you don't agree, I think you should just forget about your relationship. After all, if time passes and your relationship deepens, everyone will be in pain. Mothershire had never taken what Shi Mengwan said that day seriously. She had never thought of letting Shi Mengwan marry into her family. She had even thought that if Shi Mengwan met a man she really liked one day, and the other party really wouldn't agree to her conditions, for the sake of Shi Mengwan's happiness, she was willing to take a step back and adopt her brother-in-law's child. She was very open-minded. She had no objections to what kind of man Shi Mengwan found and what kind of man she was with. It was just that she saw Jean Hauser today. Such a man was definitely not her ideal son-in-law. The most important thing was the mess she saw just now. Her daughter had never been an unreasonable person. She wouldn't make a fuss until the porridge was knocked over. No matter who started it first, it meant that the couple was in conflict now. Her daughter was her flesh and blood, so she would always protect her. That was why she wanted to say what Shi Mengwan said. It was for no other reason than to make things difficult for Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze hadn't said anything, so Mother Shi couldn't tell what she felt. There was disappointment, and there was also bitterness. Her daughter was good in every way, but Zhang Haoze wasn't willing to answer her, which made her feel a little dissatisfied. At this point, if Mr. Zhang can't make a decision, why don't we just let it go? After all, if they're not suitable, forcing them to be together will only increase each other's pain. Moreover, with Mr. Zhang's talent, I believe that Mr. Zhang won't have to worry about not being able to find a partner. Auntie. Zhang Haoze finally spoke. I know everything you said. I think there's no problem. Huh? It was Mother Shi's turn to be stunned. What do you mean? I mean, I agree to marry into your family. I don't mind giving birth to a child with the surname Shi. Mother Shi's mouth was wide open. She suddenly realized that she had lost her composure. She cleared her throat. Mr. Zhang is a man. He doesn't want to make random promises to make an old woman like me happy. Auntie. I'm not making random promises. I'm serious. Zhang Haoze's voice wasn't loud, but his sincere words made Mother Shi speechless. Can Mr. Zhang take responsibility for what he said? Of course. A man's words can't be taken back. Since I dared to promise you, I can naturally take responsibility for what I said. Mother Shi, who didn't expect such an answer, finally looked at Zhang Haoze differently. She thought for a moment and couldn't help but speak. When I came in just now, I saw the porridge spilled. Can I ask what happened? Zhang Haoze didn't seem surprised by Mother Shi's question. It's my fault. Wan has been with me for a long time, but I haven't brought her to see my family. Wan might be unhappy because of this. Mother Shi didn't completely believe Zhang Haoze's words. Then why didn't you bring Wan to see your family? Zhang Haoze was silent. He crossed his hands on his knees and lowered his eyes, as if he found it difficult to speak. My mother has already passed away. After my mother passed away, my father married someone else. Then, my relationship with my father wasn't good. So, Zhang Haoze didn't finish his sentence, but Mother Shi seemed to understand what he meant. I see. Yes. Zhang Haoze looked up at Mother Shi. In fact, I know about Wan's not, but I'm not close to my father. So, I don't think my father has to participate in my life's important matters. Mother Shi nodded as if she could understand Zhang Haoze's thoughts. That's true, but he's your family after all. It's better to talk about some things properly. Yes. I will. Zhang Haoze nodded as if he didn't object to Mother Shi's words. At this moment, Mother Shi felt some sympathy for Zhang Haoze. His biological mother died early and his father married someone else. As the saying goes, if you have a stepmother, you will have a stepfather. Since Zhang Haoze's father married someone else, he couldn't be very good to Zhang Haoze. This way, it was normal for Zhang Haoze to have a knot in his heart and not want to bring Shi Mengwan home. She knew her daughter's temper a little. She was afraid that Shi Mengwan would feel that Zhang Haoze didn't value her. In this way, it wasn't entirely Zhang Haoze's responsibility. Haoze, I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. Wan has had a bad temper since she was young. Both her father and I spoil her too much, and we spoil her rotten. Since you can even accept the condition of marrying into the family, it means that you're sincere to Wan. I believe that since Wan let you marry into the family, it means that she also has feelings for you. Since that's the case, you two should get along well. You should understand each other. In just a short while, Mother Shi had even changed the way she addressed him. It was obvious that she had already confirmed Zhang Haoze's feelings. Jean House's expression didn't change, but he felt much more relaxed. Auntie, don't worry. I know. Mother sure nodded. Although having such a son-in-law wasn't part of her plan, it really gave birth to a mother-in-law looking at her son-in-law. The more she looked at him, the more interesting it became. Looking at the time, she stood up. I brought some local specialties from home. Is Hausa still going out today? No need. Jean Hausa wouldn't say that he still had a bunch of company matters to deal with. Mother sure was satisfied. She nodded. Okay, I'll go buy some groceries. Let's have lunch together. This was considered as acknowledging Jean Hausa's identity. How can I let Auntie buy groceries? Let's go out for lunch. Wan likes to eat the food I cook. Besides, Wan hasn't recovered from her illness, so it's not suitable for her to go out for those oily foods. Then I'll go buy groceries. Jean Hausa stood up as well. Mother sure looked at his eager expression and couldn't help but laugh. No need, you accompany Wan. I've been here before, so I know where the market is. As she spoke, she pouted and looked in the direction of the room. Wan seems to still be angry. Go coax her. She has a bad temper. Since you've decided to be with her, be more tolerant. I will. Don't worry, Auntie. Chapter 687. Jean Hausa wanted to ask Tang Hua to arrange for someone to send her off, but he was afraid that he would scare Mother Sure, so he could only give up after thinking about it. He turned around and went into the room. Shermanwan's fever had subsided. It was just that she was still listless and couldn't muster up any energy. After Mother Sure went out, she fell asleep in a daze for a while. Just now, Jean Hausa was chatting with Mother Sure outside. Because the door was closed and the sound wasn't loud, he didn't wake her up. Jean Hausa entered the door and placed his hand on her forehead. After making sure that her fever had subsided and that there was no big problem, he sat down by the bed. He just looked at Shermanwan's sleeping face. When she was asleep, she wasn't as beautiful as when she was awake. Because of her illness, her face was pale, making her look delicate and pitiful. His hand unconsciously caressed her cheek as he thought about Mother Sure's words just now. Looking for a son-in-law? This seemed like something Shermengwan would say and do. He was a little lost in thought, but his hand didn't move away from Shermengwan's face. Shermengwan didn't sleep well at first, but now that she felt someone touching her, she naturally thought it was Mother Sure. She wasn't fully awake yet. She rubbed her face against the person's hand and didn't open her eyes. Mom, I'm so thirsty. Pour me a glass of water. Jean Hausa looked at the dependence she inadvertently revealed. It was something she didn't have when facing him. He retracted his hand and looked at her deeply. He got up and went out to pour water. He poured water in. One hand was placed behind her, as if to help her up. Shermengwan yawned and still had her eyes closed. She drank half of the water from the hand that the other party handed over, but she suddenly realized that something was wrong. Her mother didn't have the strength to support her body with one hand and feed her water with the other. She suddenly opened her eyes and looked at the person. When she realized that it was Jean Hausa, her eyes widened. Why is it you? Where's my mom? Didn't he leave? When she went out, she was still thinking that her mother would see her half-hearted attitude. She would definitely chase him away. She didn't expect him to not leave. Your mom went to buy groceries. She said that you like her cooking. Jean Hausa put the cup aside and sat down by the bed. Shermengwan sat up straight, avoided his hand, and moved herself a little to the side. Why are you still here? Don't you have to work? You're sick. Her lifeless appearance yesterday scared him, so he asked Tang Hua to bring some urgent business matters here. Who am I sick because of? Who did this to me? Shermengwan's words were quite impolite. Jean Hausa revealed a rare trace of embarrassment. The reason why she was sick was indeed because of him. If he hadn't messed around in the bathroom, she wouldn't have gotten sick. Shi Mengwan looked at the expression on his face and thought that he was feeling guilty. She sneered and said, "I'm almost recovered. My mother is also here. There's nothing else for you to do. You can go." Jean Hauser didn't leave as she wished. "Auntie went to buy groceries and asked me to stay and take care of you." "Thank you, but it's okay." Shi Mengwan looked reluctant. "With you here, I won't be able to recover. If you really want me to be well, hurry up and leave. Auntie asked me to have lunch together." Shi Mengwan couldn't help but look at him. "Jean Hauser, what did you say to my mother? Tell me." Mother Shi actually asked him to stay for lunch? This revealed too much information. "Nothing. I just told your mother that I agreed to your conditions." "Her conditions? What conditions?" Shi Mengwan never thought that Jean Hauser would agree to marry into her family, nor did she think that he would be willing to let his child have the surname Shi. Therefore, when she suddenly heard this sentence, she was confused. "Your mother told me that if I want to be with you, I want to marry into your family, and I want the child to have the surname Shi." Shi Mengwan's mouth was wide open. She looked at Jean Hauser and for a moment, she thought that there was something wrong with her ears. "Jean Hauser, do you know what you're saying?" "I know. You want to marry into my family? Are you sure?" "Yes." It was just a surname, so Jean Hauser didn't care. Moreover, that matter was too far away, so he didn't have the mood to think about it now. Shi Mengwan suddenly reached out and pulled the front of Jean Hauser's shirt over. She didn't have much strength. If it weren't for Jean Hauser's cooperation, she probably wouldn't have been able to pull him in front of her. She just stared at him, her gaze weak but sharp. "Jean Hauser, do you know what you're saying?" Jean Hauser went to pull her hand. "You haven't recovered yet. Don't worry about these things for now. Rest well. Jean Hauser, answer my question. Do you know what you're saying? You want to marry into my family?" "Yes." "Does this mean that you want to marry me?" Her eyes were filled with suspicion and mockery. She just looked at him like that, not believing what he said at all. "Yes." Two consecutive affirmative answers didn't soften Shi Mengwan's attitude at all. She looked at Jean Hauser, and the expression on her face became sharper. "What about Chen Feifei? If you want to marry me, what will she do?" Jean Hauser's expression didn't change. He seemed to dislike hearing Chen Feifei's name very much. "Our matter has nothing to do with her, and you don't need to think about her." "Don't need to think about Chen Feifei?" And then? The entire Lin city knew that Jean Hauser and Chen Feifei were engaged. Now that Jean Hauser said that he wanted to marry her, wasn't he making her a third party who intervened in other people's relationships? "Jean Hauser, you don't understand at all. He might have some feelings for her and liked her, but he wouldn't understand her perspective, her thoughts, and her worries. I've said it before. You don't need to think about those things. Jean Hauser. You're so selfish." Her words were sarcastic, but Jean Hauser wasn't moved at all. He looked at the sharp side of her. It was rare for her to be like this. He didn't know if it was because Mother Shi came. The Shi Mengwan in front of him was much more confident. This was how people were. With someone to rely on, they would always be different. He reached out to pull Shi Mengwan's hand over and held it in his palm. He looked at her with a deep gaze. "Wan, you can also be more selfish." He didn't like her to think about Chen Feifei, and he didn't like her to worry too much. It was enough for him to worry about those things. She didn't need to think about them at all. Just like Grandma Shi's words and actions, she could actually completely ignore them. She would only tire herself out by doing this. Shi Mengwan pulled her hand back, and her face was cold. "Jean Hauser, I'm not you. There are some things that I will never be able to do, and I will never be as carefree as you. Wan, get out." Shi Mengwan refused to communicate with him anymore. She didn't want to look at him either. Wan. Jean Hausa wanted to say something, but Mother Sure had already returned. When she left, she took the key from the porch, entered the door, and put the dishes in the kitchen. She planned to go to the room to see how Shi Mengwan was doing, but she realized that the atmosphere between the two of them didn't seem to be very good. Wan. Mother Sure looked at Shi Mengwan and then at Jean Hausa. Her gaze wandered between the two of them. Seeing her mother return, Shi Mengwan didn't show any dissatisfaction on her face. Mom. She was about to get up, but Mother Sure quickly stopped her. You should continue to rest. I'll go cook. It's all your favorite food. You guys wait for a while. You can eat later. It was almost noon. Mother Sure was afraid that her daughter would starve, so she gave a few instructions and went into the kitchen. As soon as Mother Sure left, Shi Mengwan wanted to chase Jean Hausa away. However, her phone rang at this moment. This time, she didn't give Jean Hausa a chance and went to pick up the phone herself. Jean Hausa glanced at her, then got up and went outside. Mother Sure had just finished washing the rice when Jean Hausa came in. He rolled up the sleeves of his shirt to his elbows. Auntie, let me help you. No need. Mother Sure looked at Jean Hausa and knew that he rarely entered the kitchen. I'm used to cooking. I don't need your help. You just need to accompany Wan. Jean Hausa stood still. She's on the phone. You didn't coax her well, did you? Mother Sure took out the vegetables from the bag. Looking at Jean Hausa's expression, she knew that the two of them definitely didn't come to an agreement just now. Hausa, haven't you told Wan about your family's situation? Jean Hausa was stunned for a moment. Mother Sure knew from his expression. You should have told Wan. Wan is a tough talker but soft-hearted child. If you told her about your family's situation, she definitely wouldn't have messed with you. Mother Sure didn't know the specific situation, but she could understand. There were also such families in their town. The father brought a stepmother into the family. The stepmother didn't treat the child of the ex-wife well. When the child grew up, he wouldn't even recognize the father, let alone recognize the mother. This was all human nature. It was understandable that she couldn't understand it at the moment. However, Shi Mengwan was a little stubborn. If he didn't explain it to her properly, she probably wouldn't understand. Jean Hausa didn't respond, and Mother Sure didn't want his help. However, she asked him some questions. Other than your father, do you have any other relatives in your family? I don't have any relatives. Jean Hausa's expression was indifferent. I don't have much contact with them. Mother Sure didn't ask any more. She could understand. If even her father didn't treat her well, she probably wouldn't have the energy to interact with other people. At this moment, Mother Sure's motherly love flared up. She looked at Jean Hausa more and more affectionate. If you don't have any contact with them, then so be it. Pick a time another day and come home with Wan. We have many relatives at home. If you really get together with Wan in the future, you don't have to be so polite. We'll be your elders. Jean Hausa pursed his lips slightly, and a rare look of emotion flashed across his deep eyes. Okay. Although Wan's grandmother is a little unreliable, she's actually not a bad person. Although Wan's two uncles and aunts have some ulterior motives, they are also good people. You'll know in the future. Grandma Sure had always been the one talking about the adoption. Actually, her two brothers-in-law didn't have any thoughts. After all, they all knew how good Father Sure was to Shi Mengwan and her sister. Okay. All right. This dish can be eaten after it's served. Go and call Wan to eat. Should we bring it in for her to eat? No need. Although she's sick, don't spoil her too much. How can she be so delicate? Let her get up and move around. She'll recover faster. Mother Sure had never been a person who doted on her children. When Jean Hausa entered the room, Shi Mengwan had just ended the call with Su Qingsang. After Su Qingsang returned to Lin City, she had started working again. However, this time, she brought her good news. She was pregnant. This was really good news for Shi Mengwan. She had already agreed to be the godmother of the child in Su Qingsang's stomach. When she heard that Su Qingsang was pregnant, she was extremely happy. The two of them had been married for more than a year, and now they had a child. They were even pregnant with twins. She was really happy for Su Qingsang from the bottom of her heart. She had never given birth, but Su Qingsang was an obstetrician and gynecologist. She didn't need her to teach her anything. However, it didn't affect the two women's excited discussion about the child. Especially when Su Qingsang talked about how the child came about. It was very strange. Hua Jinmiao didn't seem to want children. This pregnancy was an accident. Su Qingsang originally thought that Hua Jinmiao would want her to abort the child. However, she didn't expect Hua Jinmiao to be very happy, even to the point of being silly. Through the phone, Shi Mengwan could feel the happiness that Su Qingsang revealed when she said that. She was very envious. After hanging up the phone, she couldn't help but think of Zhang Haoze. If she was pregnant, would dear brother be happy? Thinking of the situation between her and Zhang Haoze, she smiled bitterly. It wasn't the same thing at all. If she had a child, it would be really unfortunate. Just as she was thinking this, she looked up and saw Zhang Haoze enter the door. She especially didn't like him now. She turned her face away, not wanting to see him at all. It's time to eat. It wasn't that Zhang Haoze didn't see the expression on Shi Mengwan's face. His lips were pursed into a straight line, and he looked a little gloomy. Shi Mengwan didn't give him a good look. She got out of bed, but as soon as her feet touched the ground, her body became a little weak. She rarely got sick, but she didn't know that this illness was because she had slept for too long, and her legs were a little weak. Zhang Haoze quickly stepped forward and hugged her. The moment his hands hugged her, Shi Mengwan instinctively wanted to struggle. Unfortunately, even if she was healthy, she wasn't a match for him, not to mention that she hadn't recovered from her illness yet. Zhang Haoze looked at her still pale little face, but he didn't intend to put her down. He just carried her and walked out. When Shi Mengwan realized what he was going to do, she struggled with all her might. She didn't want her mother to see her like this. Don't move. Zhang Haoze whispered in her ear, you don't want to fall either, do you? Shi Mengwan couldn't help but glare at him, but Zhang Haoze didn't seem to see her ugly expression. He wasn't afraid that Mother Shi was outside, so he directly carried her to the dining table outside. Mother Shi happened to come out with the soup and was about to put it on the dining table. She suddenly saw her daughter being carried out by Zhang Haoze, and the smile on her face became a little playful. Especially when she saw Shi Mengwan staring at Zhang Haoze with deep love, she even said, you're too much. Don't you have legs? Come down and eat. Put me down. Shi Mengwan glared at Zhang Haoze again, and Zhang Haoze obediently placed her on the dining chair. Mother Shi now felt that Zhang Haoze wasn't bad. With his height and physical strength. What was the saying on the internet now? Yes, boyfriend strength. Not bad, not bad. The smile on her face became even brighter. Shi Mengwan knew what Mother Shi was thinking when she saw her expression, and she was angry again. She couldn't help but glare at Zhang Haoze again. Mother Shi looked at Zhang Haoze, and her gaze was different now. Haoze, sit down and eat too. Thank you, Auntie. Zhang Haoze sat down next to Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan glanced at him, then got up and moved the chair to the side. Seeing this, Zhang Haoze moved the chair in her direction. Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and was about to move the chair again. Wan. Mother Shi couldn't take it anymore. You're not honest even when you're eating. Do you want me to help you move the chair outside the door? Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and glanced at Mother Shi. Mom, what do you know? She had a lot to say, but Mother Shi didn't give her a chance. What's wrong with Haoze? I think Haoze is very good. You really have to change your temper. Sherman eyes widened. What's wrong with my temper? Stubborn. Mother Sher unceremoniously criticized her daughter, but when she faced John Hauser, her face was smiling like a flower. Hauser, Wan has been spoiled rotten by her father and me. You have to be more tolerant. As she spoke, she scooped a bowl of soup and placed it in front of Jean Hauser. Sherman saw this and was very angry. She couldn't help but reach out and bring the bowl of soup over. You child. Mother Sher looked at Sherman and felt that her daughter was a little too much. It's okay, Auntie. Jean Hauser was quite magnanimous. The more he was like this, the more Mother Sher felt that her daughter was immature. She scooped another bowl of soup and placed it in front of Jean Hauser. Sherman resisted the urge to knock the soup away. Mom, doesn't he have his own hands? Let him scoop it himself. You child, didn't I help you scoop soup at home? You don't have hands either. I'm your daughter. He's my son-in-law. The bowl in Sherman's hand almost fell down. She looked at Mother Sher and felt a headache coming on. Mom, what nonsense are you talking about? How am I talking nonsense? Mother Sher glanced at John Hauser. Hauser has already agreed to marry into the family. How am I talking nonsense? He's lying to you. Sherman was furious. She couldn't help but glare at John Hauser fiercely. It was all this guy's fault for spouting nonsense in front of her mother. Mom, don't believe him. I don't believe him. Believe you? I think Hauser is pretty good. I think you really have to change your temper. Otherwise, I won't be able to stand you in the future, let alone Hauser. Mom, am I still your daughter? Why do you always side with outsiders? If he becomes my son-in-law, then he won't be an outsider. Mother Sher's expression was matter-of-fact. Sherman was furious. She watched as Jean Hauser picked up the bowl in his hand and calmly drank the soup. She couldn't help but feel angry. Without thinking, she snatched the bowl from his hand and placed it on the table. She glared at Jean Hauser fiercely, not caring about Mother Sher's presence at all. Jean Hauser, leave. Go find your fiancé. Don't lie to my mom here. Even if she would shed all pretenses and make Mother Sher unhappy, she couldn't take it anymore. She had no scruples. As soon as she said this, Mother Sher's expression changed. Her gaze was sharp for a moment, and then she looked at Jean Hauser inquiringly. Chapter 688. Fiancé? What fiancé? The expression on Mother Sher's face changed completely. She looked at Sherman and finally realized that her daughter did have a temper, but she was definitely not someone who would cause trouble for no reason. Hauser? What fiancé? Jean Hauser looked at Sherman as if he didn't expect her to talk about such a topic in front of Mother Sher. The corners of Sherman's lips curled up, and her eyes were filled with disdain. She looked at Jean Hauser fixedly. She wanted to know how he would explain it in front of her mother. Mr. Jean? Mother Sher saw that Jean Hauser hadn't spoken, so the way she addressed him changed. Jean Hauser glanced at Sherman and turned to face Mother Sher with a calm expression. I do have a fiancé, but I don't have any feelings for her. And I promised Wan that I would resolve this matter. So you really have a fiancé? Mother Sher only paid attention to the first sentence. Auntie, I said I would resolve it, Mr. Jean, please. Mother Sher's face darkened. She looked at Jean Hauser impolitely and pointed in the direction of the door. Mr. Jean, our small family can't afford to be associated with Mr. Jean. Auntie, I promised Wan that I would definitely resolve this matter. Jean Hauser was rarely patient, but Mother Sher didn't want to listen. Then we'll talk about it after you resolve it. The atmosphere was a little awkward and stiff. Jean Hauser's expression was a little awkward. He had never been good at explaining, but because the other party was Sherman's mother and an elder, his attitude was quite polite. Auntie, I just need some time to resolve it. This isn't a big deal. Shi Mengwan looked at him and didn't speak. Not a big deal? Why would she want a man who couldn't be with her openly? Mother Shi looked at him impolitely and didn't accept this explanation. Not a big deal? I wonder what Mr. Zhang's definition of a big deal is? You think having a fiancé isn't a big deal, but if our Wanwan has a fiancé at home, I wonder if Mr. Zhang also thinks it's not a big deal? She countered Zhang Haoze, and Zhang Haoze's expression became more and more uncomfortable. Auntie. Please. Mother Shi's expression was already very ugly. It was true that she liked Zhang Haoze before, but that was based on the fact that Zhang Haoze had a clean background and no messy relationships around him. Zhang Haoze had a fiancé. In Mother Shi's eyes, no matter how good he wasn't a good man. He couldn't be entrusted with her life. The atmosphere in the dining room was very awkward. Mother Shi and Shi Mengwan didn't look too good. Shi Mengwan sat there, and the corners of her lips curled into a mocking smile. She didn't go to see Zhang Haoze. With Mother Shi's help, she had nothing to do. She even leisurely picked up the soup in front of her and took a sip. Freshly made sanxian soup, light and delicious, tastes really good. Mom, this soup is really delicious. She looked at Mother Shi with a faint smile on her face. That silent intimacy caused Zhang Haoze's eyes to darken. If you like it, drink more. Mother Shi glanced at Zhang Haoze as she spoke. Mr. Zhang, if there's nothing else, you can leave first. Wanwan and I still want to eat. It's inconvenient for you to be here. Zhang Haoze took a deep look at Shi Mengwan and finally stood up. He stood in front of the dining table. His tall figure made him look imposing as soon as he stood up. Mother Shi didn't give in, and Shi Mengwan still drank the soup leisurely. After drinking this soup, she felt much better. Her heartless appearance made Zhang Haoze's expression turn a little ugly. He pulled out the chair and took a step back. Auntie, please give me some time. I will solve my problem. Mother Shi was unmoved. In her heart, nothing could compare to her son's happiness. Zhang Haoze looked at Shi Mengwan again. She had already finished the soup in the bowl and handed the bowl to Mother Shi. The corners of her lips curled up into an extremely bright smile. Mom, get me another bowl of soup. Don't drink the soup. Drink it later. Eat first. As Mother Shi spoke, she scooped a bowl of rice for Shi Mengwan and placed it in her hand. Zhang Haoze saw that she wasn't looking at him at all, and his expression was very ugly. Auntie, Wanwan, I'll be leaving first. No one paid attention to him. Ever since Zhang Haoze became famous as a young man, he had never encountered such a thing. However, Mother Shi and Shi Mengwan acted as if they didn't see him and continued to eat. Zhang Haoze turned around and was about to leave. Wait. When Zhang Haoze reached the door, Shi Mengwan suddenly called out to him. This time, both Mother Shi and Zhang Haoze looked at her. They didn't understand what she was doing. Especially Mother Shi. Her face was full of worry. Could this child be regretting it? Zhang Haoze. Leave the key to my house. After Shi Mengwan said this, she lowered her head and went to eat. Mother Shi seemed to have suddenly thought of this problem. She stared at Zhang Haoze and waited for him to hand over the key. Zhang Haoze stood at the door. This was the first time in his life that he had experienced such a predicament. He took a deep look at Shi Mengwan, then took out the key to Shi Mengwan's house and placed it at the entrance. He opened the door and walked straight out. The door opened and closed. Shi Mengwan's heart had been hanging in her throat, but now, she finally relaxed. Mother Shi sat down and looked at Shi Mengwan with a hint of heartache in her eyes. Wanwan. Mom, eat. Shi Mengwan knew what Mother Shi wanted to say without guessing, but she didn't want to hear it now. Wanwan, how could Mother Shi eat? She only felt that her daughter's life was bitter. Did you know that Zhang Haoze had a fiancé? Shi Mengwan lowered her head and didn't answer Mother Shi's question. However, this attitude was undoubtedly a tacit agreement. Daughter, why are you so stupid? You, Mom. Mengwan's eyes were a little sore, and her heart was also uncomfortable. She forced herself to ignore it. It's all in the past. He's gone now, isn't he? This person had left, but the impact was still there. When Mother Sure thought of the impact Mengwan had caused because of the other party, she felt even more uncomfortable. This John Hausa looks like a decent person. Why would he do something like having an affair? Mengwan didn't answer her, and Mother Sure didn't need her to answer either. She said to herself, that's true. You can know a person's face but not his heart. There are some people in this world who really can't see through it. She looked at Mengwan worriedly and sighed in her heart. Wan, why do you think your life is so bitter? Mom. Mengwan stopped eating for a moment. She looked at Mother Sure. Can you stop talking? It's all in the past. Yes, it's all in the past. Mother Sure stopped talking. In the future, stay away from that John guy. I know. It's not that I'm stopping you, but no matter how good this man is, he's still someone else's. Mom, I told you, I know. In the future, I'll find a better one. We'll talk about it later. How could she be in the mood to look for another one now? That Xiaoqi, Mom, can you not mention him? If Mengwan was interested in Xiaoqi, the two of them would have been together a long time ago. She just didn't mean that. Mother Sure let out a long sigh. Seeing her like this, Mengwan put down the bowl in her hand, picked up the bowl, and placed a bowl of soup in front of her. All right, let's eat. Seeing that Mother Sure still didn't seem to be happy, she said nonchalantly, Mom, don't worry. Your daughter is loved by everyone. Flowers bloom when they see flowers. Someone will definitely want her. Seeing her like this, Mother Sure could only let it go no matter how worried she was. You. Mengwan lowered her eyes and focused on eating. She didn't respond to Mother Sure's words. Tang Hua looked at John Hausa. Even if he didn't say anything, he could tell that John Hausa was in a very bad mood. Boss? How's the cooperation case with Tianji? It's almost done. We're just waiting to sign the contract. Confirm this matter again later. Sign the contract in these 2 days. Yes. In silence, John Hausa looked out of the window. No one knew what he was thinking. Tang Hua felt a chill on the back of his neck. Boss's mood really wasn't right? It couldn't be because of that person, right? Is there any movement over there? The old man's health seems to be getting worse. I heard that he called a lawyer again 2 days ago. Call a lawyer? Jean Hausa narrowed his eyes as if he had thought of something. He sneered. Make the arrangements. I'll make a trip to Qing City. Okay. I'll make the arrangements now. Tang Hua had just opened the office door when he saw Chen Feifei standing at the door. His expression was a little strange. Miss Chen. This shout was especially loud, causing Chen Feifei to glare at him. What are you shouting for? You're so surprised. I don't know why Brother Hao left someone like you by his side. Tang Hua rubbed his nose and turned to look at Jean Hausa. Jean Hausa gave him a look, and he quickly left. After he left, Jean Hausa picked up the document beside him and started reading. Chen Feifei bit her lip and walked in quickly. Brother Hao, what have you been busy with these 2 days? You haven't been in the company for 3 days. I have something to do. What's more important than the company's matters? Chen Feifei was wearing a decent professional suit and holding a document in her hand. Jean Hausa looked up at her. What's the matter? Of course there's something. Chen Feifei's attention was successfully diverted by Jean Hausa. She waved the folder in her hand. Brother Hao, I also want to contribute to the company. This is a proposal that I spent a few days making. Take a look. Jean Hausa wasn't in a hurry to take the document. He looked at Chen Feifei with a solemn and somewhat gloomy expression. Feifei. Yes? You don't have to work so hard. Jean Hausa was serious. You can stay at home and enjoy your days as the eldest daughter of the Chen family. Chen Feifei looked at Jean Hausa blankly, as if she didn't quite understand what he meant. But, I want to enter the company. I want to help you. There's no need. Jean Hausa said directly, Feifei, don't waste all your time on me. You should go live your own life. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.